Good afternoon, everyone. I will open up this afternoon's meeting at 5:35. This is the Mashpee Conservation Commission meeting for Thursday, January 9th, 2025. We are meeting in the Wacoit Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, broadcast live on local cable channels 8 and 1072, and streamed live on the Mashpee website. Before we do begin, if you would like to join me in a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. On this National Day of Mourning, I would ask you to take a moment of silence in memory of President Jimmy Carter. Thank you. Okay, first on our agenda is to move into executive session. Just grab that language to read. I would accept a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to review current status and strategy recommendations with Town Council regarding litigation relative to a denial for a proposal located at 425 Monomoskoye Road. Do I have a motion? Thank you, Steve.
Second.
Thank you, Alex. Any discussion amongst commissioners on the motion? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Alex?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, so that carries unanimously. So we are now in. Good evening, Alex. Okay, we're good. Good evening, everybody. We have 6:30, so I'm going to open up the Thursday, January 9th, 2025 meeting for the Mashpee Conservation Commission. We are meeting in the Wacoit Meeting Room, Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North. Broadcast live on local cable channels 8 and 1072, and streamed live on the Town of Mashpee website. Before we begin, if you would like to join me in a pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. On this National Day of Mourning, I would like to take a moment of silence in memory of President Jimmy Carter. Thank you. I'm going to begin with the hearing for 291 Monomoskoye Road, Jacques N. Morin, trustee, the 291 Monomoskoye Realty Trust. This is a proposed construction of a single-family dwelling, hardscaping, landscaping, associated utilities, and an IA septic system on property located at 291 Monomoskoye Road. Representative is Down Cape Engineering with a notice of intent file number DEP 433314. We have a request from the representative to continue this hearing to February 20th, 2025. And the reason given is that they need more time to address the revisions that we gave to them with our concerns for this project the last time they presented. So I would accept a motion for a continuance.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve.
Second.
Thank you, Alex. Any questions or discussion by commissioners?
Do you have a time?
I don't see it on my copy,
Do we need to put in times anymore?
But we don't times anymore.
so we'll just set the time for 6:30.
Yeah.
And we'll do that for each
Yeah, we don't
one
need
that
time.
gets continued.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I was
And that way we won't, okay.
Wasn't there, but I know.
creature of habit.
So we'll set that time for 6:30 on February 20th. Okay, so no other questions? Roll call vote, Alex?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That motion carries unanimously. Our next hearing is 9 Santuit Lane, TD Realty Partners, LLC. This is a proposed raise and replace of an existing single-family dwelling, mitigation plantings, and installation of an IA septic system. Representative is Falmouth Engineering. Owner of record is R Investments, LLC. This is a notice of intent, DEP file number 433320.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself since
Yes,
our
Steve.
investments is a client of mine.
Okay, thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, we still have 5. Good. Okay. Good evening, gentlemen. We'd like to keep this to 15 minutes if possible, but if we have to go longer, I'll make that decision as we go deeper in it. We have a lot of stuff on our agenda tonight. If we can have your names for the record, we can begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Michael Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant, along with Brian Wall, attorney for the applicant. We filed a notice of intent for permission to raise and reconstruct the existing home on the subject lot. The application includes a raise and reconstruction of that home, the shifting of the position of the house from its current location further back from the pond edge, installation of a new septic system, including an component to replace a substandard cesspool, and associated mitigation planting as required in your regulations. The subject lot has an area of 10,750 square feet. It's on Santuit Lane. It's a corner lot. It's on a freshwater pond called Santuit Pond, so the wetland resources include land under a water body and an inland bank. We've shown the 75-foot setback from the most landward edge of wetland resource. We've also shown the 150-foot jurisdictional line on the plan, which falls off the lot, so the entire lot is within your jurisdiction. This is not in a coastal storm flood zone. It's freshwater wetland resources only. We have been before the Board of Health prior to submitting an application to you to obtain variances required from setbacks from Title V and local Mashpee health regulations, and the Board of Health enthusiastically approved the variances, and we're happy to see the innovative alternative septic system component as part of this septic system upgrade. You will see on the site plan the table of mitigation calculations, which runs through the existing versus proposed impervious surfaces and yields a requirement for 145 square feet of mitigation planting. But because we're shifting the house back from the water's edge, and there's an opportunity to restore the area where the existing house is located, which is superimposed on this proposed site plan in red line work. If you look at sheet 1 of 3 alone, you will see the house on the existing conditions plan, but this shows it in red line work and the driveway in red for reference. But you can see we're shifting the house back, so that green shaded area is the location of the mitigation planting we're proposing. And since there's an area available that will be disturbed, we're going to replant it, and it totals 1,000 square feet of mitigation planting, even though the actual mitigation requirement is just under 150 square feet. We did not want to propose lawn area, of course, in this area adjacent to the pond. In addition to the mitigation planting and the septic system, where we've outlined on the plan limit of work, because of the requirements and size of the septic system, it has been moved and positioned on the lot as far as possible from all the wetland resources. It is going to be raised to provide the requisite separation from the groundwater table. A significant area of the lot is invasive vegetation. So that is proposed to be removed. It will be removed because it's in conflict with where the proposed house and septic system are located, but other areas that are not in those locations will also have the invasive plant materials removed. We did get comments from Drew you may not recall, but the hearing was initially scheduled for mid-November. You did not open the hearing. There was a lack of a quorum, so we requested a continuance, and because of holidays and other things that couldn't be heard till tonight. So, but the comments made by Drew back then included that requested that we make mention of the fact that there's a significant invasive understory on the lot that's proposed to be removed. That he wanted clarity on the structure, existing footprint size versus the proposed. It's on the plan in the general notes for lot coverage, but to clarify, the overall footprint of the existing house is 1,064 square feet. The proposed footprint is 1,867 square feet. We also showed on the plan that mitigation area in accordance with the requirements for increases in impervious surfaces, and we identified it generally, but not with specific landscape plan species specifications and sizing. And Drew also commented that he recommends that a landscape plan, a detailed landscape plan also be submitted for the record. So we don't have that at this time, but we recognize the comment. We're not disagreeing with that. We were trying to be cost-effective and had put a general note on the plan in hopes that we could work with staff and not have to hire a separate landscape designer. But if it's the desire of the commission, so be it. I think that sums up my presentation, and I'll turn it over to Attorney Wall to discuss the waiver request, and we're both here for questions.
Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you. For the record, my name is Brian Wall. I'm an attorney, and I represent the applicant. And as Mr. Berselli said, I'm here to address the waiver requirement. So under your bylaw at section 172(7A) A1, there's a requirement that there be a 75-foot wide naturally vegetated buffer. And obviously on this particular project, we can't meet that. The current existing conditions certainly do not comply with that. And even when we are making the improvements that Mr. Borselli detailed, we still can't comply with that, because if you look at the plan, the green 75-foot line is just to the right, I guess to the east of where the septic system is. So the idea behind the project was to move the septic as far away from the pond as possible, and that takes up all of the area that's outside of the 75-foot. So what we tried to do, as Mr. Borselli said, was move the house away from the pond towards the front of the property as far as we could possibly do that. But we still can't meet the 75-foot requirement, so we have submitted a written waiver request, and I'd like to just briefly go through with it. I think I can do this in less than 5 minutes. Under your bylaw, you have waiver provisions that authorize the commission to grant a waiver, and you also have provisions under your regulations that allow you to do a waiver. And so I'm going to briefly go through them. The waiver provisions in your bylaw are found in section 172(7), subparts A, B, and C. And in a nutshell, what they say are the following. Under A, a waiver can be granted for good cause shown when the resource protection is enhanced relative to pre-existing conditions. B says that where the buffer zone between the proposed project and the resource area is previously altered, you can grant a waiver, which we have that situation here. And C says when best available technologies are used and the project will result in an improvement to the resource areas. To address those, this particular house that exists today was constructed in 1953. It's in a very dilapidated condition. I know that Mr. Kent had shown the assessor card a moment ago. The house is essentially condemned. That's why there's that red X on the property, and it's fenced off with some security fencing because the building commissioner asked that that be done. We were before the zoning board last night, and the building commissioner, who was sitting right here to my right, actually spoke and addressed to the commission and urged the Board of Appeals to move forward as rapidly as possible because he has some grave concerns with the house. So there's a compelling need to do something about that house, and what we're proposing to do, and I am sorry to be repetitive, but I have to go through your criteria. We're moving the house back from the pond to a point where it's 17.6 feet back and creating the naturally vegetated buffer between the house and the pond. We're taking the cesspool that's currently in groundwater and non-compliant and creating a septic system as far away from the resource area as possible and creating separation to groundwater by elevating the soil absorption system and by providing nitrogen denitrification. The parts per million currently are 17.18 nitrogen loading, and the new septic system will reduce that to 6.18. So there's a dramatic increase. We would respectfully suggest that these improvements, 1, enhance resource protection relative to existing conditions, 2, all occur in a previously altered buffer, and 3, use best available technologies. And so again, going back to subparts A, B, and C, we would respectfully submit that we've made a case that this project is eligible for a waiver under your bylaw. You similarly have provisions in the regulations, and I think the commission is well familiar with those. In Regulation 12, Section 4, there are 3 considerations. They're not actually criteria or requirements. We don't have to meet all of them, but they're considerations that the commission needs to go through, and they are as follows. How compelling is the need? What degree are normal standards being asked to be put aside? In what degree are compensatory or mitigation measures offsetting the impact? So again, the need is compelling. This house is deteriorated. It's a danger. It needs to be rebuilt. The applicant has gone through an analysis of trying to rebuild the existing structure, but it's not economical or feasible, and there are some physical problems, including the fact that the septic system would have to be pumped up, whereas the current proposal takes care of that with gravity. There is a need to move the house away from the pond for obvious reasons. There's a need to upgrade the cesspool to a compliant IA system. As far as the house itself, the existing house is 2 bedrooms and has an area of 640 square feet plus a screened-in porch. Obviously, it's a very modest house. I would actually call it a cottage at best. So the proposal is to make the house bigger, but we would argue that it's going to a 3-bedroom house. The water table is very high here, so the house cannot have a basement. And so there is a garage proposed with some storage area above, and we would argue that there's a compelling need for that because there can't be any mechanicals or storage in a basement because there is no basement. The standards that are being set aside are minimal given the existing conditions. What we're talking about is providing a 75-foot buffer, which can't be done, but the proposed project greatly enhances existing conditions relative to that 75-foot buffer because currently the house is literally perched on the edge of the pond and the area to the landward edge of the pond is all altered, whereas the proposed project will greatly improve that. And finally, what are the compensatory or mitigation factors? As Mr. Borselli said, the proposal is to have more mitigation than is required by your regulations. And we're also proposing this IA system as far away from the wetland resource and also elevated in a mound system that provides the separation to groundwater that does not currently exist. As I mentioned, the cesspool is actually in the groundwater table currently. So given all of those factors, we've respectfully assert that we've demonstrated a compelling need, that the standards being set aside are minimal, if at all, maybe not being set aside at all, and we have offered compensatory and mitigation measures that more than offset the impact. So we would respectfully suggest we've made a case for eligibility, and we would ask that you exercise your discretion and grant the waiver. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'll go first to commissioners for questions or comments that you might have on any parts of the proposal.
I'll start. So what I look at here is a lot with upwards of 6,000 square feet of wooded area. What the proposed plan is a lot of maybe 1,000 square feet of mitigation plantings. So that's a little hard for me to understand, for me to agree to a waiver when that much is being altered. I mean, the entire lot is being altered, the way I read this. I understand the need to move the house. I get that there's grave concerns, that there's urgency. And if the plan had come in front of us with more naturally vegetated area preserved or more mitigation plantings or more of an attempt for mitigation plantings, I could get on board with it. So that's my...
Okay. Anyone else?
No, I just think we need to see a landscaping plan, complete with all mitigation, plantings and whatnot.
So you're not in agreement with working with staff, you want to see a plan?
No, I'd like to see it.
Yeah. All right. Sarah?
Yeah, I've got just a couple comments and questions. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
My kids are sick. I don't want to get anybody else sick. Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Zolo. Just by the numbers that have been presented and my calculations, forgive me if they're incorrect, it looks like we have 3,500 square feet of disturbance of naturally occurring vegetation. I understand some of that might be invasives that we will want to treat and replace with native plantings, but I'm seeing that in contrast with the 1,000 square feet of mitigation plantings proposed, and have very similar concerns, especially considering we're adjacent to a pond with, I would say, profound water quality concerns, for which vegetation are a very important factor for us to consider. And I also am looking at the comments here from Agent McManus, and I do agree that the waiver does not address the compelling need for the house to be increased in size. I do understand the existing cottage needs to be replaced. What I don't understand is the compelling need for it to be increased, unless, to be frank, somebody is just trying to make money here. But it is a tremendous impact to the resource area, which is what we're here to consider. So I would like to see a landscape plan, and I'd also like the applicant to consider if it would be financially feasible to decrease the scope of the project commensurate to what we're replacing, so that we could preserve some naturally occurring vegetation. So those are my comments and thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Rich?
Yeah, I was out there today, and obviously it is a dangerous property. I hate to see anyone go in there, and what they're currently proposing right now, I think, leaves the property in better condition than what's currently there.
Okay. All right. Neil, would you like to?
I don't have anything at this
Nothing?
time.
Okay. Shauna?
No, I think what has been put on the board is what I had concerns about, so.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Mike, I've got a question on the nitrogen loading calculations. I read in the proposal, and I heard you give testimony to the cesspool that's sitting in groundwater. And I'm looking at your calculations on the existing condition, and it specifically refers to Title V wastewater flow with a 330-gallon per day tank. And I'm kind of puzzled as to where these numbers are coming from.
Well, we were told by the owner, or the current owner, that there are 3 bedrooms in this house. The assessors, I think, indicate 2, but I was given the information that there's 3.
Right.
So I can check on that, and if I do discover there's only 2, I can adjust the numbers.
Right.
There'll still be a dramatic improvement, but I can adjust the numbers.
So without an IA system, if this, I mean, nobody's in there anyways, but if the house were functioning, based on what the assessor's card is, you would maintain that we're at 17.18 ppm.
No, I think it would be less than that. It would be less than that, but it would be more than with the IA treatment. Because currently, with the assumption there's 3 bedrooms in the house and not utilizing an IA system, our nitrogen loading is just over 17. If now we're going to build a new house with 3 bedrooms and an IA, and we're going to be at just over 6 parts per million. That 17, if it is in fact a 2-bedroom house, will go down. So the difference, or the quote-unquote improvement, will be less, but it'll still be significant.
Right. Okay. No other questions from commissioners? Yes.
Didn't you just tell us it was a 2-bedroom house, Attorney Wall?
There's a discrepancy between the assessing records and what might actually be in the house. The
Sure.
assessing records have it at 2, but I would also add to what Mr. Borselli said, that Title V has a presumption that all houses have 3 bedrooms, no matter what.
Good.
The only way to get 2 is a deed restriction. And not to repeat what Mr. Borselli said, but the point being is that the IA system with 3 bedrooms brings it down to 6 parts per million. So the improvement might not be as much as represented, but the point is it's a significant improvement.
Well, a cesspool in the groundwater table always leaves room for improvement for a new
Absolutely.
Title V system, so understood.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
How long has this house been unoccupied?
I don't actually know that. I couldn't answer it. I don't know.
At least since 2005, because that was when I've been out there since then, so I know it's been unoccupied since then at least, but probably prior.
So the way I understand it is that a cesspool, if it's sitting unused, that after like a year and a half, it's no longer leaching the nutrients in because all that nutrients is already moved. So yes, like a cesspool is not good. It sounds awful. But if this property hasn't been contributing since for 10 years, I mean, it's just more than that. My math is off.
That's all very, I think that's very, very true. The house has not been used for quite some time. But it's theoretically possible that the property owner could pull permits to try to restore what's there. And if there were no increase in flow, the cesspool could literally stay. So what we're proposing is,
Not with the Board of Health regs. Within 300 feet of the pond, no.
well, if there's no increase in flow, there'd be nothing to trigger upgrading. But that's beside the point. The point is that the proposal is to,
Building permit would.
It's automatic.
Right.
Um,
It's a Board of Health issue, but let's go on.
yeah, and the point is the proposal is to do a state-of-the-art denitrifying system as far away from the pond as possible and with 5 feet of separation to groundwater. It's a significant improvement.
So why now? Why is the property owner deciding now's the time to?
The property owner our client bought the property about 2 years ago. That's why. So whoever owned it before, I don't know why it was unoccupied. I don't know why they decided to sell. But our client, the applicant, bought it and wants to do this project.
Okay. No other questions? I'll go to the agents next for any comments or questions that you might have.
Yeah, you see my comments in writing. I
Yes.
think, having a detailed landscape plan, because I know that's something the commission has been consistently asking for when you see plans where mitigation is shown in conjunction with everything else, and it's kind of an indication, illustration of a mitigation area, but there's some kind of blank spaces, if we will, that I'm not sure if lawn is proposed there. It's kind of questionable. It's really, we don't know what's happening in some of those other areas of the yard. And I wasn't aware of the no basement, so the storage aspect and compelling need for a garage. I still feel it's a small lot, and while it's not an exceptionally large house, you said proposed is 1,867 square feet compared to 1,064 square feet. It's still a pretty sizable increase for the lot size. And, as was mentioned before, retaining natural vegetation, because some of the vegetation, what I saw on the work limit is not invasive, it's native. You've got some native pines in there and some native oaks that, from what I saw, are within the work limit that are proposed to be removed from the house footprint. So, on a pond that's as severely impacted as Santuit, I just thought it would be worth mentioning that, to try and minimize clearing of existing vegetation, and maybe looking at, even though I know it's not a requirement directly from mitigation, increasing the mitigation and trying to reduce impacts to existing vegetation, while trying to accommodate a reasonably sized home, given the lot size. Because it's really predicated on the lot size that had me make that comment.
Okay. Dan, anything you would like to add?
No, mine was just about native vegetation on the lot, but Drew covered that, so I'm good.
Okay. So I will go to the public for questions or comments. I saw a hand up at one point during when the engineers were speaking. Did you want to speak, sir?
All I wanted to say, it's been empty since 2019.
Okay. 19. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so what I'm hearing from the commission is that they would like to see a landscape plan, and I know, like you had mentioned, being willing to provide that, and we would continue this project to give the commission an opportunity to look at the landscape plan.
Yeah,
If we go down that road, I would like to see whatever trees are going to be kept, those tagged, because I know a lot of them are coming out. When I was down there on the site, you kind of look around, and to me, it looks like a clear cut, but I believe some of the vegetation is staying. So on that landscape plan, if you would show exactly what is staying, and then, of course, your whole planting configuration, and on the site itself, if you would tag the trees that are staying.
I want to see the trees that are going, too.
Well, anything that's not tagged is gone.
Right
I think it would be easier to tag what's staying. Am I right or wrong? I mean,
I think there'll be less staying than going. And if you just look at the, the position of the septic system and the real estate it takes up,
that's what I did.
yeah,
And that whole area is gone, right?
there's no way around it.
And there's some trees there that, they've got to be 24-inch or bigger.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of biomass coming off this site. So, the landscape plan is, I believe, critical, especially with the condition of the water. Anything else? Do you want to see anything more on good cause for the waiver language, or because of the fact that there's no basement?
I think, that was just information I wasn't aware of. So I understand that. I still think there might be some opportunity to try and look at, where you might be able to scale back a little bit if you can
Right.
save some more vegetation. But visually speaking, to identify trees, whether they're, tagged to be kept or removed would be a good thing to have in the field.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the houses projects that we looked at, I think part of the septic system was under a garage,
We go to,
right? The one we just had session on before this. It looked like a portion of their septic system was under the garage, because when we were looking at the flow vents.
Right.
So in just thinking, it could be
They could just shift
moved back and over, like if the garage was on the other side. I don't know, I just want to see an effort made.
Well, I think when someone sits down and gets into this landscape plan, there might be an opportunity to shrink or nudge the building one way or the other. Maybe the garage could be shrunk a tiny bit. Whatever we can pick up in terms of saving, either taking biomass out of this property or putting additional biomass in,
Right.
is nothing but a win for the pond. And that's really what we're interested in. I believe, speaking for myself, I think the commission is.
I'd also like to see, just as a note, if you do elect to request a continuance, if there are any alternatives to some of the impervious surfaces. So it doesn't, I don't see on the plan here if we're looking at a pervious driveway, or, if there are any alternatives that we can have just for water flow, as it's going to run right off into the pond. I'm hearing that the garage as proposed is about 17 feet from the water, so significant.
If I could speak to that, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
So the driveway is going to be pervious.
Great.
We're contemplating a rain garden to collect the surface water from our roof, which will have more native plantings in it. At that point, we can't not have the roof be impervious, so all that's left is the roof, basically, at that point,
Sure.
of impervious.
Sure. Thank you. Let's see it on a plan. Yeah, let's see it on a plan. That sounds great.
Is it proposed to be a crawl space in the middle of the basement? Or what is?
We have very shallow groundwater. In fact, we're contemplating a helical pile foundation, because although to excavate for a traditional frost wall and footings would require extensive dewatering,
Yeah.
and it's just not viable for you, or it's not really economical. So the foundation system is going to be unique with helical anchors.
Okay, then. What is your
For
pleasure?
dates?
February 6th? I'm sorry.
No, 20th?
January
January
23rd,
or February 6th.
or February 6th, or February 20th.
Go for the 20th. Try for that. If we could just have 1 second, 'cause we don't have the landscape designer on board yet, so we just want to pick a date that's reasonable so that we can come
Sure.
back.
You might want to go as far down as
Build on the
possible.
20th.
Okay. So I think the 6th is too early, and Mr. Borselli's not available the 20th. So could we have the next available hearing?
March 6th is the first one, and the second one is March 20th.
The 6th.
The 6th?
6th, yep.
March 6th.
The only one so far.
3/6. We're not assigning times on these hearings any longer. It'll just be at the beginning, be here at 6:30, and we'll get you in as soon as we can get you in.
Absolutely, sure.
Because we've had so many go over it. This is our new format.
I always found the 3-minute intervals kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
tough to work with.
Wait.
Okay, so there's a request to continue to March 6th with a starting time for our hearings at 6:30.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Alex.
Second?
Thank you, Sarah. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion or questions by commissioners? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. Alex? Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Oh, wait a second for Steve to get in. Look at that clock, huh? 10 past 7.
Yeah, for one hearing, just took 40 minutes.
It's a long one.
All right.
Okay. Now calling the hearing for 353 Simon's Narrow Road, Simon's Narrows LLC. This is a request to extend the order of conditions, DEP file number 433149. Representative is Baxter Nye Engineering. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. For the record, Matthew Eddy, a professional engineer with Baxter Nye Engineering and Surveying, representing John Cumming as applicant and owner of this project. I believe this is fairly straightforward. The house is just about completed. They just need a little bit more time to complete the landscaping and hardscape. Obviously, with this weather that we're having, they're not able to do that. So it's probably going to be buttoned up in the spring, but we've requested a one-year extension just for them to complete that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. One-year request. Any questions from commissioners? Matt probably has the answers.
I'm sorry?
You probably have answers if there's questions, no?
Yeah, I'll try.
Anything? No?
I have a question. Yeah, so is this a property where we have regular check-ins with the agents for progress?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with, I just want to make sure those would be extended as well, if so.
There is in our order of conditions, we don't regularly stop by there for this parcel because of the dead-end circle. We have been lately,
Yep.
simply because it was just a permit approved, so they started construction, this permit as well, just to keep track of the end of the road, because there is some washout and erosion from all the construction going on sometimes, so.
remember.
For this case, yes, we have been down there, but not for the permit itself.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
for keeping track of the road and the runoff on it, so. But no, we usually don't stop down regularly unless there's an issue.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I'd accept the motion.
So moved?
Thank you, Steve.
Second.
Thank you, Alex. Motion made and seconded for the one-year extension. Any further deliberation? Hearing none. Alex?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion
Thank you.
carries unanimously.
That's more like it.
Next hearing is 0 Simon's Narrow Road, Cumming Family GST Non-Exempt Trust. This is a request to extend order of conditions DEP 433151. Representative is Baxter Nye Engineering. Good evening.
Again, good evening. Just for the record, Matthew Eddy, professional engineer with Baxter Engineering and Surveying, representing John Cumming as applicant and owner. This is really an accessory use aspect. This is a, it's adjacent to the road, and it's on the road parcel, if you will. It's just a small storage shed for water-dependent items such as kayaks, et cetera. The construction has not yet started on that, so we requested a 3-year extension. They're going to be going on that this spring. Hopefully that'll be done within less than a year, but we did just request the typical 3-year extension.
Sure.
So, again, if there's any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions on the shed itself? No? We're good?
This has never been continued before, right?
This is nothing new. It's on the existing order. It hasn't been extended.
This is the first extension.
Correct, this is the
First
first
extension,
extension.
yeah.
Yeah, when was the order conditions issued?
Just about, it
D1?
would expire
22.
on January 21st, so it would have been January 21st, 2022.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll accept the motion on this.
So moved?
Thank you, Steve.
Second.
Thank you, Alex. Motion made and seconded. Any further deliberations? Hearing none. Alex?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
sir.
Y'all have a
Thanks, Matt.
great evening.
Good night.
Take care.
Next hearing is 90 Wheeler Road, George L. Rice Jr. and Jennifer C. Rice. This is a proposed raise of existing single-family dwelling. Construct and maintain a new single-family dwelling, hardscaping, landscaping, mitigation, pool, and Title V IA septic system. Representative is J.C. Engineering Incorporated. It is a notice of intent, DEP file number 433324. And we have a request by the applicant to continue this project, or this hearing, to January 23rd. And they need some time to address issues that have been raised by, I believe, our agent.
Yeah, so there was some, not major issues, but changes that definitely need to happen to it. And instead of them just coming and opening the hearing, they want to address all that so they can just do revisions already beforehand. So that's all. They just need time to address their plans for the revisions needed. Some of them had to do with some mitigation as well as some buffer zone stuff. So that was all.
Okay. All right. So I would accept a motion for that continuance.
So moved?
Second.
Thank you, Alex. Motion made and seconded. Steve on the first, Alex for the second. Any deliberations by commissioners? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. Alex?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
And Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that motion carries unanimously to the 23rd. Next hearing is 231 Vineyard Reach Condominium Association. This is a proposed invasive species removal and management and construction of a retaining wall for erosion prevention. The representative is Wet Tech Design, Land Design Incorporated. It is a notice of intent, but I do not have a DEP file number. So we can listen to the information unless there's a need like for a continuance. If you guys are set and happy with everything and want to issue an order, we can vote on it, but we will not issue the order until such time as the DEP releases a file number. So if it does go through tonight, that'll just be on hold until that piece is squared away. Okay? We've crossed this bridge with some other projects a few years back, I believe, and rather than have it hung up, we'll finish our work and then just wait on the state.
Correct. Yeah, until the DEP number is issued, there's no time frame when it comes to issuance. So.
Right. Okay. So, good evening, sir.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Wayne Tavares. First things first, I apologize for not having the DEP number. I checked last week, and they have recognized 231 Vineyard Reach on their file. So I figured, well, in another week, when this meeting is here, they change it, but they still haven't. They have a double asterisk on us. I don't know what that means, but we don't have a file number. But thank you for allowing me to present this project. There's no structures on this project. It encumbers about 17,000 square feet. It starts and it's layered. I have a colored plan. If you want to put it up on the board, that would be nice. There you go. And it's layered from a man-made water hazard pond that New Seabury has constructed. You can see that on the left-hand side of the plan, and you see a thick line going through. That's the division of what Vineyard Reach owns, which is on the right-hand side. You can see buildings 2 and buildings 3 on the right-hand side. So coming up from the man-made pond is some willow trees that have volunteered some time ago. Willows are not long-lived. We'd like to exchange those for a plant list I have on the left-hand side, which is kind of copious, about 143 plants that are full of berries and very wildlife habitat friendly. In addition to this, the invasive portion of this plan is on the upper level, right on the property line, where there's a number of plants like Rosa rugosa, bittersweet is also up there, and, excuse me,
Gray
oh,
willows.
what's that?
The gray willows.
Yeah, and the gray willow. So, well, that's not really invasive. So it's a situation where we're trying to remove these. The gray willows won't last long. I believe when this man-made pond was put in, they sort of volunteered themselves on the edge of the water, and they're now in the water. So they only have a short lifespan, and they break with wind and so forth. So we're anxious to remove those and to stabilize the slope that is in the magenta colored portion in the middle of the slope, which is now basically meadow plants. So we'd like to, and the method of operation should be explained here too. In order to remove those willows, we're going to have to bring in a small excavator. Some people have to jump into the pond. We'll probably cut the tops of the trees off, grab it with a chain, and just lift it like a tooth out of the water. We're going to disturb as little as we can, but there are a lot of willows. So we'll crawl along the magenta portion of the bottom of that slope. And there are some beneficial plants that already exist. We're not touching those. You have inkberry that's on there, you have some bayberry, you have groundsel bush. We've located them all where they are on the plan. There is another tree that also was either, it must have been planted because it's a non-native and it's only found in nurseries. That's the Bradford pear. You see a couple of those heavy lined circles that are in there. So there's about 4 or 5 of those Bradford pears, so we'd want to remove them. They're short-lived, they are invasive, and we'd like to remove them. So at the same time, the method of operation would be to remove the willows from the bottom, reach up, and to remove, well, first of all, the men will remove the, excuse me, the landscape personnel will cut the branches of the bittersweet and the Rosa rugosa, and the excavator will reach up and grab the root system totally out of the ground. This is a mechanical removal. We're not going to use herbicide on this, and we're removing it totally. We're trying to leave the middle of the slope intact as much as possible. There is some pitch pine that is on this area. There's also some red cedar. We're leaving those intact as natives, beneficial natives. There's also, running off the plan on the upper left-hand side above the plant schedule is a bankment of native grasses. We're leaving that completely alone. We're starting at the area that is colored in magenta where it says end of drainage pipe, and we're working our way all the way down to the bottom. If we can elevate that plan, I'd appreciate it. Can that be elevated to show the bottom? Yeah, so the machine would enter on that lower portion. I've shown a red cedar that exists over there, and right in that area is where we would remove that. Later, after this is done, we need to place a retaining wall up by the patios on Building 3 and Building 2. There's a need, due to erosion, for a retaining wall. So we've showed the details of the retaining wall. It's only about 2 or 3 feet tall, not even 3, but 30 inches tall. The details are on the bottom of the plan. There it is right there. So it'll capture the water as it runs off. It'll go to the backfill of the retaining wall. It's a segmental wall. It's the only structure that we're dealing with. So forgive me, in the beginning I said there was no structures. This is a structure. It's a vertical structure. It's necessary in order to prevent the erosion for a space of about 123 feet. I staked everything out with different colored flagging for those of you who visited the site. White flagging was used for the invasive species. These are some winter pictures of what it looks like. The willows are pretty high in the background, and the Rosa rugosa is quite a bit of the front, and with the red berries, of course, was the bittersweet. So basically the entire top of the slope, except where native species exist as an area for sumac. Sumac is native and it's beneficial. We're leaving that alone. We might prune it back so that it grows and spreads wider and has its roots spread for erosion prevention. It's just at the end of where the wall is, so we're using that to anchor the top of the slope as well. That being said, it's an exchange, basically a non-structural project. 90% vegetative exchange for invasive species and not long-lived species for beneficial species. We think it's a good project, and I'll turn it over to the board.
Thank you. Questions from commissioners?
Sure. I have a couple questions, Wayne.
Sure.
Can you enlighten me, what is a water hazard pond? What does that term mean?
Oh, it's, a golf course put it in. New Seabury built that for a water hazard for its golf course.
But what is, like a hazard, like for when they're golfing? That
Yes.
The ball goes in and never comes out.
Yeah, it never comes out, that's right. It's a big sand trap that's wet.
Okay. And then the height of the wall is only 2 feet?
Yeah, that's it. 30 inches in one couple spots, I think. So it's about it. I said 2 foot plus or minus. And it'll reduce at the ends. It'll reduce to a foot. It's like a big smile as it comes up to the ends. It'll only be a foot high.
The end right here.
Yeah, it was just hard to tell because there's no topography lines on the plan. And then lastly, I do want to say in your summary, you do mention for maintenance that you will use cut and drip. So you were saying that this is a fully
Yes,
mechanical
we're not
project?
using cut and drip. I'd rather use mechanical means, and I think the board would like to go along with that. So if we want to take that method out, yes, absolutely.
Well, that leads me to my last question. Are you doing anything to the Phragmites?
We hadn't intended to do that because it's a sort of a horse of a different color. It exists where it is. It's hard to spread. It's not going to spread anymore. It's got a wall above it. It's got water below it. It's growing in the water, basically. It's not going to spread much out, but in order to get in there, that would be cut and swipe. That's the only way to do it. And I
Right.
hesitate to do that portion. It's self-contained. It's not spreading out, so I left it alone. I did put it on the drawing, but I'm hoping not to have to.
Well, I just know if you're pulling out the gray willows next to it, if there's any of those rhizomes that spread at all, I mean, if by chance you're pulling out the gray willow right next to it and you're pulling out some of the root system or rhizome system from the frag and it floats away, I mean, you are then seeding it to other parts of the pond.
You know, there's some frag growing, you're right, there's some, okay, let me get my thoughts correct here. There is a big patch of Phragmites, standalone patch.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is not affiliated with any of the willows, it's not close, but there is frag that's growing around the willows. So that will be taken out at this very same time and removed mechanically.
I think you're gonna need to maintain it with herbicide going forward. I mean, you can't just physically remove frag without intense follow-up anytime there's a shoot.
We're hoping, it's a management program, so we're hoping to follow this up year after year with the same means. And if we have to resort to cut and drip,
Right.
we will. We'd rather do it mechanical the first year. We won't make it any worse, but we might see the frag come back.
Yeah.
The frag is growing in water. That's the difference. When frag is growing in the upland, and I usually present a program that cut and drip, and then when we win that battle in 2 or 3 years, I have a backup plan to plant something in that area. But that's on upland. Wetland, but still, you can walk on it, let's put it that way. Here, it's in the pond. In the pond, it's very difficult. So when we remove the black willow, that frag that's adjacent to it will be removed too, mechanically.
I mean, there are some thoughts with that, though. There has been success with just drowning it. If you cut it low enough, then you starve it of nutrients, and you can drown it. There's also, I mean, I've seen people have success with cutting it in the beginning of the season and then treating it twice during the growing season, and then you're like basically done. Way quicker than just treating once in the fall, but in the growing season and then in the fall.
Well, we've done it, I do it 3 times. I do it once in the beginning of the growing season, in May, when we do this, and then I do it in the height of the growing season, which is about June, and then, of course, we do it in September, because that's when the nutrients translocate, and that's when the big effort is. So we do cutting. We don't do cut and drip. The first 2 are just cuts. The third one is cut and drip, so that it translocates the poison.
Exactly, yeah, you don't need to treat it in
And you don't have to do it. But this is in water, so it's a little bit difficult. We'd rather take the chance that it would drown itself, and with a maintenance program, if you'd allow us a maintenance program to go back year after year, the big thing here is to get out those willows, and at the same time, you're mechanically going to remove the Phragmites. And I don't think you'll ever get a stand of standalone Phragmites group like the one that's on the other side of the golf course that I did show on the plan. Now, that's contained by the water because it'll only grow in certain depth of water, and the wall is above it. So that's why I left it alone. The other areas that do have a little bit of frag, it's going to be disturbed, it's going to be deep in the water, And we'll come back and then do cut and drip on that frag if it does come back.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions from commissioners?
Okay, Wayne, I got a couple questions.
Steve.
One, I know it mentions the Vineyard Reach condo. Did you gain approval from New Seabury?
Yes, the Vineyard Reach president, Pam Baldessari, she's not here tonight. She has reached out and talked to the,
Kevin
I
Taylor?
forget their names, but the president and the vice president of New Seabury, and I've had communications online with both of them, that have said, fine, we understand what you're doing, and this is good. So we've notified them also as abutters, but we also have literature from them approving this project. And they have talked personally with Pam and her vice president, I can't remember her name, I think it's Sue, both. And I just forget the name of the president right now over at New Seabury, but they have agreed. I've never talked to them, but it's all by email. So yes.
Okay. And then, how come the plan doesn't have any topo on it?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
And the plan doesn't have any topography on it? Because it's very steep. I was out there today.
Sure,
It drops off very quickly.
sure. The plan was originally done by BSS Design, and I sent in the plan that they had used to permit these projects several years ago, which I guess didn't have topography either. So it shows the exact placement of how they located and how they surveyed and put the basements in. The topography drop-off is about 8 feet from top to bottom of the slope. I've walked every square inch of it. I flagged all the BVW and so forth. So you do have a slope there. It's probably 4 to 1. If you'd like to see a cross-section, I'd be glad to provide a cross-section.
Definitely.
That would be okay. And we could show details of the planting and so forth. Location is going to be based on steepness. So we're going to go back out there after this is done. We are not, out of 17,000 square feet, we are probably only touching about less than half space, say 7,000 or 8,000 square feet will be disturbed. The rest of it is going to be intact. We're reaching to the top and we're working along the bottom. So then in between, we will be planting where it has been disturbed and a few places where it hasn't. But we're planting the top of the slope, we're planting the bottom of the slope, and we're planting the disturbed areas. So you're entitled to know, yes, I could have put some erosion blanket in here, stapled it, and given you that detail. So since we're waiting for a DP file number, that might be a good thing to provide. I was hoping to avoid another meeting, but I'll be glad to meet with you, showing you a detail of planting at the top, how the slope is to be addressed, how it's in the middle, and maybe the mechanical details of talking about an excavator going, you'll go in once.
Well, that's one of my questions is, without having the topo, how is an excavator going to get in there? Is that a flat area? What, if there is, what's the width of a flat area?
Well, the flat area is
Couldn't tell
adjacent.
because I didn't walk down into slope. It was so
Oh,
heavily
okay, yeah.
vegetated.
He'd work pretty close to the pond. He'd be working in an area that's flat, adjacent to the pond. And in that area, he'll be reaching right in the pond. That'll be the closest. Then he'll reach up to the top of the slope with the excavator to pluck out those
Okay,
plants.
so that's where a cross-section would be handy, to see how wide is that flat.
Yeah, okay, yeah, yeah,
Next question, the wall details, you said the 2 to 3 foot high on the wall.
yes,
And when you say a segmented block, are
Yes.
you talking about a concrete block?
yes. Yep.
Okay, not a techno block where that has the pins and,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
talking about a vertical concrete block wall,
No,
right?
no, we can, if you give us choice, there's Keystone, there's the wall that you mentioned, Pavestone has one. Some of these step back as you go. They're 8 inches, they're all the segmental blocks are 8 inches. We have to bury the bottom course and they walk up. So that's 3 courses high plus a cap, which is 4 inches. So there's 3 courses showing, 1 course buried, and a cap. So that's how they work, and some of them work with pins, and some of them have an edge that sits back. So one of the things about the detail that I did not show was I showed a vertical wall. So
Yeah, that
forgive
looks like
me.
a concrete block wall to me, yeah.
Yeah, so we're not doing concrete, we're doing segmental, well, it is concrete, but it's segmental. And 8 inches high, we might use pins, if you'll allow us to, for the setback, or we'll just use the one that has the edge. I think that's Keystone, is the one that steps back. And then you get to a cap, you glue the cap on at the end. The whole
Right.
thing is level.
Okay, and then during construction and after plantings, I didn't see anything for erosion control.
That's another thing that you do on a revision. When I show the cross-section, I automatically think of hay bales or sedimentation fence up at the top. That's the first place, and I would have put it on, I should have put it on the plan. It would have junked up the plan a little bit, but yes, there should be erosion control devices on the top of this slope, as well as a limit of work line. So we don't want to get carried away with how far we go.
Okay.
So it's a limit of work line that I owe you and a sedimentation fence, yes.
Okay, and then my last question is, you mentioned about mowing, with all slash material removed and done for at least 2 years, so if, on that steep slope, how are you gonna mow on that steep slope?
Oh, you can mow a 4-to-1 slope. You can mow 3-to-1 slopes is the maximum that we've ever mowed. And
Done about a hand mower, or?
no. They'll take a Gravely type of machine, brush cutter type of machine. It has access everywhere. It's got a low center of gravity. They'll mow it even sideways, like this. They don't have to go up and down. They just mow it sideways.
Okay,
So, yeah.
great, thank you.
Sure.
Other questions?
I just had a couple, and thank you both. You both addressed questions that I have. Wayne, thank you for coming in and all the information. I think it seems like the plan might not be up to spec according to our regulations, but it's helpful to have you here to answer the questions. I did have a question about the control of land, and if we needed anything documented in the application to indicate that there is permission from New Seabury for the property that we're approving work on, since it looks like maybe 50% of it is with the condominiums.
Okay.
So that would be one question for the commissioners. Do we need that documented?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that.
Yeah, okay. The other thing I just want to point out in the narrative on page 5 here is that there's a really small sentence asking for a waiver to work within the 50-foot buffer zone of a bordering vegetated wetland and a continued maintenance plan. And I wonder if we do continue, Wayne, if you would provide more information for that waiver request than just part of a sentence. We actually don't have a 50-foot buffer anymore. We have 75 and 150-foot buffers per our revised regulations. And I believe this would fall under Regulation 19. Is that right, for freshwater wetland, even though it's man-made? Per the notes from the agent, it's still jurisdictional.
Okay, I just took it as an administrative request, 50-foot buffer. Anytime we work within the 50-foot buffer, if you'd allow us to, I've asked for a waiver in this town. That's what is usually asked for. So I thought that was an administrative ask.
No, in this town, we have a 75-foot buffer for our resource areas, and it's generally a no-touch zone. So any work that happens within that buffer does need to be addressed with a waiver request, which would identify, compelling need, different alternatives. I certainly understand the need for invasive species control and removal, but just to make sure that we're adjudicating this equitably as we do other projects.
Okay, I'm a little confused because that is an administrative request. We know we're working actually over the BVW. Sure. Into the pond, into the water hazard. So the waiver, I assumed, was recognizing the fact that we're doing that and administratively bless the project because it's a one-time shot. That's all we're going to do. We're removing those and planting plants and going away and managing it afterwards, but only in order to get it to grow. There's no fertilizer to be used. There's just concerns about erosion, which we're going to address with erosion control devices and so forth. But we're working in the 50-foot zone. I know you don't allow it, but this is a beneficial project in the sense of providing way more native species and wildlife habitat.
It's like a restaurant.
So,
I think also what the big thing is, like, since it's the paperwork, I think Sarah's asking for you to update from the 50-foot to have it actually reflect saying 75-foot buffer in the waiver, I think is what.
how did I word it? Forgive me.
Just 50-foot. I think you just put 50-foot, and it just has to say 75-foot buffer. Because in Mashpee, we have a 75-foot
Okay.
inner buffer, not
Oh.
a 50-foot inner buffer, that's all. That's the thing. Your waiver needs to be updated to reflect Mashpee's bylaw of 75-foot, not 50.
Okay, so, forgive me, I guess I'm not up to date. It's a 75-foot,
Yeah, so now in
Waiver.
Mashpee, for the past couple of years, we have a 150-foot buffer for any project.
Sure.
That's our wetlands buffer.
Sure.
So half of that, 75 feet, would be the inner buffer.
okay,
You know how
right.
the DEP says 50 feet, that's the inner buffer? So
Yes.
we added 25 feet onto that, so it's 75. So in the waiver section, in the waiver you're requesting,
Right.
you have to actually reflect, I'm asking for a waiver from the 75-foot buffer, not from the 50.
Oh, okay, okay. But realistically, this is possible. I have to request it administratively, but we all understand what's going on. in
It's
this
understood, but on the paperwork, anyone in the future or anyone currently that isn't aware of the project, when they read it, they know it's a 75-foot,
project. Okay,
not
all
a
right,
50.
thank you. Thank you
So
for
if
pointing
that's,
that out.
I just want to make sure.
Sure.
Okay,
So, yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
okay. I gotta come back to Mashpee more often.
Yeah.
I'm at 50 feet. I'm stuck at 50
could
feet at
move.
75. Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
There's no creatures in the pond.
Well, I was going there next.
Oh, sorry.
When you,
course
I'm
there
sure
are.
you don't have the information. It's a man-made water.
Yes.
issue. We know
has it.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
But obligate species do not care whether it's man-made or natural. So I'm curious as to when the pond was created, how long has it been there, and what's in it? Because when you start talking about herbicides and treatment and slopes, and storms come and go very quickly, I'm concerned that there could be a whole variety of salamanders, turtles, frogs, who knows? So I'd like to know a little more information about the water hazard, the pond itself, when it was created, how deep is it, what's in it, that type of information. The manager of that golf course, I'm sure, would be able to have access to all those records.
Sure.
Because they're doing all kinds of applications.
Sure.
So that would be helpful.
Sure.
When you come back with the stuff for the erosion controls and everything else.
Okay. That's one of the reasons, I mean, I'm glad you're bringing it up. That's one of the reasons why I don't want to treat the Phragmites, which is in the water,
Right.
because it doesn't escape much in depth. It likes the upland, it likes to attach itself to the upland. So if I don't have to cut and trip, it's not that I'm saving work. I'd rather do it mechanically to see how effective we are, and then you come into it with what you just said. Absolutely, then we see how adverse I'm putting an herbicide into such a pond. What's in there? Now, I've seen bullfrogs, I heard the bullfrogs, I had to flag the wetland
I'm
myself.
sure there's a lot of stuff in there.
There's a lot of stuff in there. So if we can get the details of how they built that, you're correct. I think that's a decade old, to be honest with you. I think it's a decade old. But we'll have the dates for you, we'll have the depth and the details of that original construction. I think I can get that provided so that you know. And then are you requesting a wildlife habitat person to look at this, or?
Not necessarily. I think the manager of the golf course would have a general idea as to what they've seen over the past decade.
Sure.
Coming and going. I'm sure waterfowl are in there.
Yes.
So my concern is with the obligate species to that water hazard.
Okay.
The minute I hear herbicides, I think of species.
Right. And the willow, so you know, is fac wet, and the Phragmites is really fac wet too, and that's what makes it grow up on the upland. So there's neither one of those two species are obligate, but we'll see what is obligate that's there, and hopefully it's not like loosestrife or anything else. We create another monster, you know. So, yeah, we'll check into that. I've been there in the summer, I've been in there in the winter. I did not see a negative invasive species like loosestrife, just the frag, just the willow. But I'll be happy to investigate it a little deeper. Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? None? From the public, any questions or comments on this project? Okay. Let's
I'll make some. Can I make a
Oh,
comment?
yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So real quick, just so everyone's aware, this is clearly a man-made pond. All right, so DEP classifies this as a regulatory pond, so this is under jurisdiction. And anything, this is 310 CMR 10.04, it's the pond definition within the Wetlands Protection Act. Anything that is 10,000 10,000 square feet or under that has an impervious layer in the pond, whether that be clay or a rubber liner or some other technology, is actually disqualified from jurisdiction. So this one is qualified. This is more than 10,000 square feet, and I can tell you assurance there is no impervious layer in the bottom. The back here of this pond is an actual revetment wall. So that's about a 3 foot to a 4 foot tall, out of the water, that is, in the water, I couldn't tell you, revetment wall. So as Wayne was saying with the Phragmites, it just can't grow there because the water's so deep. It's a good like 4 or 5 feet there. It just can't grow. So this is a jurisdictional pond. You might see other work in water, golf course water holes, whatever they want to call them, where they actually do work in it because it is not jurisdictional. Or they're doing work around it because it's not jurisdictional. They put rubber liners in or clay liners. So I just wanted to make sure everyone's aware of that because I know I get a lot of questions on why are these permits coming forward for a golf course water hole, and it's jurisdictional. That's the bottom line. Real quick though, Wayne, time frame between, is there a set time frame or an idea of removal of the vegetation into construction of the retaining wall?
Sure.
Because if you're going to have all this disturbance, I just would like to see that go forward sooner than later after the
Sure.
plants.
We'd like to be able to get this approved. This is January now, and we have another meeting coming up, obviously, and hopefully, let's say we pass at the next meeting. Let's just say that happens. Then you have to issue the order of conditions. We have to get it recorded. We'll work there in February if that happens. We'll work there in March. We'll work there in early April, and then after that, all bets are off because we don't want to work during the growing season. So that's our attempt. And like I said, I was there in the summertime, but to get it here took some effort, and I don't want to say why. It's just we're here now, and that's the point. I'm a little late getting here for a good reason that I don't want to discuss, but I'm here now. It's January. We're hoping to get late February, and all of March, I think we can do this.
So if you did say you did the vegetation removal, do you think you would start the retainment wall installation like the next week, within the same month?
We start it because it's an erosion control device.
Yeah.
So we're going to start that as soon as we're able to get into the ground. Right now, you're not going to get into any ground. So I would say by March, we're going to do this simultaneously. Remove vegetation, because right above that, or right below that is Rosa rugosa in most of the area. So that has to go. Once that goes, we can start that wall. I like to start the first course of the wall. After that, it gets real easy to do, and that wall will go up real quick. So it's a simultaneous effort. The crew has been hired to do this already, and they work there. So they will be there, and if you choose, you want supervision, I'm the guy for the supervision. If you choose, you can,
It's on you.
But it's a good crew. They don't need
So
supervision.
when do you want to come back? What's the continuation date to?
What's the next date you can give
The
me?
next one's the 23rd, but it's going to be up to you again because we don't have the DEP number.
Yes.
So if we do come the 23rd,
Yes.
I would hope they have the number. If they do not, you need to send us a request for continuance. We can't just continue it automatically.
I'd like to go for the 23rd and use that contingency. If I don't have a DEP number, I'm not going to show up again. But I will submit all the information you're looking for.
That's awesome.
Okay.
The new Seabury consent, the cross-section, the sedimentation fence, the topography that's going to show where this excavator is going to sit. Those things are sort of locked into my memory bank, so I'll have those in 2 weeks easily, but the DEP number is really the foil here, so.
And then the last thing I have is right here in the bottom right. You see this drain pipe from the roof is going into the wetland here.
Yes.
So I get that. If you could put a dry well there, that would be fantastic. If not, this pipe needs to be protected because it's clearly getting run over by lawnmowers every time they mow.
Yes.
It's just shredded and there's plastic everywhere.
Oh, I know
honestly,
the one you're
on this
talking, yeah.
pipe. So if you could just, I don't know, put something around it or make it so they don't want to run into it with a lawnmower.
Sure.
Just to secure that. A dry well would be best because there'd be no exposed pipe,
Yeah.
but I would think that's something you could discuss with them for an option.
Sure. I know the pipe you're talking about, too.
Yep.
Okay, and a waiver. I forgot about the
And a
waiver.
waiver, yes. The
Yeah,
waiver, update the waiver.
Okay.
Have it reflect 75 feet. If it's anywhere else in the whole narrative,
Sure.
have it reflect 75 feet to 150 feet.
Like the title.
Sure,
Yeah.
okay.
And the inventory of
The pond.
the pond.
Yes, the
Wildlife
history,
assessment,
and the
yeah.
creation of the pond, any history on that.
Sure.
And then anything from their management for the golf course that says, there's this type of bird that goes here during the season or not, or anything they have on
Yeah,
record.
a general consensus of
I can
what
go through the list
is
when I
in
make
that
the
pond.
motion.
Okay.
If you want, one more time.
Yes.
If you want to write it down, Dan.
Okay.
All right,
I'm ready
so
for
make
the
a motion to continue to January 23rd
February.
for, is it January?
Oh, it's January?
January.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, so with the following revisions, topography on the plan, a cross-section of the area to be worked on with the topography. Need a letter from New Seabury for approval to work on their property. Kevin Taylor is the golf course superintendent. He typically provides letters to the ARC when we
Yeah, he's very
work in
responsive.
this. Revise the wall detail to show what wall you're going to use, a techno block or one of the other ones that you're
Oh,
going to use.
you want it called out, okay.
Yeah,
You want the,
whatever one that you choose, it doesn't,
Okay.
as long as it's not a straight concrete block wall.
okay.
Erosion control and limit of work line. More info for the waiver under Regulation 19. And then the history and inventory of the pond and pond depth. And then a dry well for that damaged drain pipe. I think I covered everything there.
Got it. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion by commissioners? Hearing none. Alex?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it. I gotta see you guys more often.
Yeah, it might be 100 feet rather than 75.
At least he's nice.
Sorry,
Just did the keelway as well.
Oh my God, I know.
Get the culvert lost.
no precious time. Wow. Okay, I'm going to call the next hearing for 50 Kim Path. This is Beth A. McGinnis, trustee, Beth McGinnis Family Trust. This is a proposed raise of an existing single-family dwelling. Construct and maintain a new single-family dwelling with deck, stairs, dry wells, associated appurtenances, landscaping, and Title V IA septic system upgrade. The representative is Cape and Islands Engineering. The DEP file number for this notice is 433325. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mark Dibb, a civil engineer with Cape and Islands Engineering, on behalf of the applicant for 50 Kim Path. We filed a notice of intent application for 50 Kim Path. The proposal is to raise and replace the existing non-flood compliant, flood code compliant dwelling. The property is a 7,125 square foot property. The existing house sits basically in the middle of the property. There is an existing paved driveway on the right side as well. It's still serviced by an existing cesspool. Resource areas for the property is flood zone only. It is not within a 150-foot buffer of any of the resource areas further to the west. It's just outside those buffers. The project proposes to demolish the existing house, build a new house in approximately the same footprint as the old house. The finished floor of the new house will be flood code compliant. It'll be elevated up to elevation 13, which is 1 foot above the base flood elevation. The grades around the house, in front of the house, there's essentially no grading being performed. On the right side and the left side will be, again, at about existing grade. There will be a raised area in the back solely for the new septic system. There will be a new 3-bedroom septic system to replace the existing 3-bedroom system. It'll also include a nitrogen-reducing IA component, and as well will provide 5 feet of separation to groundwater, even for the repair. We'll be able to site that system at 5 feet. So it does result in a raised area in this neighborhood. These are, as we redesign these systems in the tight lots, unfortunately we do have a wall around 3 sides of that as well. The 4th side is the house itself, but we've kept that wall to a minimum and the fill to a minimum to achieve a good design for the septic system. But everywhere else, we're basically utilizing the existing grade. We do have roof runoff drainage systems on both the left and right side of the house. Another thing we've incorporated as a result of a couple comments from Drew. One was the requirement for, per regulation 31, I believe, on the lawn area requirement. So disturbed or renovated lawn area should only be 10%. So the darker green, so there's a piece in front, actually on the screen, it's the neon green piece in front, and then just above the leach field itself is the 10% of the property area for lawn. We've added that, I know the orange along the left side of the house, it's kind of similar to the house, but there's a area there. We plan to essentially provide native plantings in that area. That's about 182 square feet, just to enhance some landscaping. And then there's a lighter tan color in the remaining areas. That'll be a mix of native and ornamental plantings, and as well as there's 2 walkways proposed that are either going to be just a gravel or shell walkway. The patio in back will be a pervious patio. The driveway in front will be changed from pavement to gravel or shell driveway, similar to most of these properties now on this street. We are proposing a cobblestone lining just at the entrance to separate the gravel from the pavement. We did provide a waiver from 25C7 setbacks from flood zone, because we're in the flood zone. So anything we do on this property requires that waiver. I did outline it per bylaw section 7A3. When it comes to best available technologies, we're providing a new flood compliant house. We're minimizing the fill to really the extent possible, as well as adding an IA system. Significant, actually not significant, but a reduction of impervious area other than a house, or trying to use pervious materials. And then we're incorporating about 1,300 square feet of both native and some ornamental landscaping. Where right now the existing, if you visited the property, the existing house is there and it's just a flat lot, 80% of it's just lawn. So, I think we achieved a good combination of meeting the goals our client is trying to gain by having to vertically raise this house to make it flood code compliant. It's it'll be standard construction with flood vents, all the necessary code-related items. I think with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. So I'll go first to commissioners for questions or comments that you may have.
I have some questions.
Sandy?
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
This is about the retaining wall. On the back of the property, there already is a retaining wall, which I assume is the back neighbor. And your retaining wall is going to make a gap between those two retaining walls, which seemed to me, because of the slope, that it's going to make a channel for the water to flow down. And I was wondering, you have that existing shed there that's going. I wondered if you thought about anything like a dry well in that area. And also on 54 Kim Path, we approved a retaining wall there for their septic system, which is curved. So I'm thinking that, you know, if water's going to run down in there, they're going to pool around their curve, and then this retaining wall is coming down with more water.
So I was aware of the, I'm not sure what number you just said, 50, I don't know, this property to the right, I guess. You'll see in the dashed line, we
See
did.
it right there.
Yeah.
Right.
We did incorporate the future wall. In my opinion, that the area with the shed, you can see the existing grades. There's like a 6.8 and then a 6.2 just to the south of that.
The other plan, I think.
Yeah, right there. And then there's a 6.2 just on the edge of the wall, and then it goes 5.8. It was my opinion that if water did, from a flood or anything, get in there, it would have a way to drain towards the road. But we could put a yard drain in there and to ensure, we're not creating a dam or something like that. I mean, it'd be nice to kind of just merge all these things together, but that's even more fill. And
I
but
had the same question, Mark, too. Would it make sense to put the retaining wall up against the property line to eliminate that channel?
I thought
On both sides, you have two
I didn't know
channels
if you
there.
could do that. Yeah.
again, that would be great. You can see the one to the north is not quite on, there's about a 1 foot
Height difference.
on the other you see how there's a little space
Right.
between,
They kept it back.
it'd be great to just kind of blend all these together. The other one is close, but I was on purposely leaving, basically from the shed, all the tan lines, that is all low, so the erosion control line makes it look like a wall that it's supposed to symbolize a hay bale. That is not, that angled piece is just erosion control. That's not another wall. So
What's the distance between the walls and the property line?
our wall,
I think it's
Yeah.
like 8 feet.
Correct.
It's,
the house is set back 10. So, from the left side of the shed is our wall, and then the other, it's approximately 18 feet.
How much?
18.
No, well, I'm saying that you have a wall that's on the north side, from the edge of the wall
Oh,
to
on
the
the north
property
side,
line.
yeah, on the north
So you-
side, it's-
And on the west side, you have two sides. This is what Sandy's saying, we get two channels.
Yeah.
Two
Again, they're just.
feet, 3 feet, 18 inches.
I don't have a scale with me, but it's about, between 4 and 5 feet, 3 to 5 feet, somewhere in that range. Unfortunately, I mean, both of the wall to the north and the wall to the west, they're just a little bit onto the neighbor, into their own property. So, I mean, if we put our wall on the property, there'd be a 6-inch
Right,
gap.
but it doesn't make sense to have a 3 foot or 4 foot wide channel there.
No, it doesn't.
well, not
I-
that it rain.
In a way, if you don't leave a channel, then you're pushing the water somewhere else. At least it can freely get around this property versus if we,
Yeah, but if you put the wall on the property line, you're not pushing water anywhere. Any water's on the other properties.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one. Like I said, it'd be great to just tie them all together, but
I also have another question.
unfortunately, yeah, their walls are a little bit into their own property, so,
Mark, also, up on the design for the septic, it shows the ending of the retaining wall, but then it also says landscaping wall, which doesn't show, which looks like a short wall. I don't know if it's just because they just ended it there.
2, 5 foot.
But I didn't know if that was like the next section of your retaining wall, or is that something separate?
since it's only about 30 inches high, landscape wall and retaining wall are synonymous, you know.
I just, was confused, yeah. And am I correct, your retaining wall looked like it was going to be different heights as it went down that slope? Or am I just reading those numbers wrong? On the plan, which one did I see it?
Our retaining wall is,
Somewhere I saw that it was like, started at like 11 down to, or 14 down to 11.
at the northeast corner, it's 10, northwest corner,
Yeah,
it's
so
10.
it's not straight across like the existing retaining wall for the neighbor. Is that correct? I was just curious.
The cross-section shows the 14 up above and
Yeah.
down to 11, but it's that. But then all your grade shots are all 10, 10.5.
The intention that the wall is 10. If I have to make a typo fix, I can, but that intention, it's 10.
Like Sandy said, does that match up with that cross-section you have?
Oh, 11 is, I mean, we have the finished grade, and that number 11 in the box is 10.6, and then the wall would be 10. I mean, I think it looks, I don't see any glaring.
But,
I don't see any
so the
glaring.
cross-section says 14, but your first floor elevation says 13. So is the cross-section?
Oh, the 14 is referencing the 14 in the table. Sorry.
Okay, so that's not elevation.
Yeah, these squares are referencing this table on the left.
Okay,
So the 14 is 11.5, is elevation 11.5.
11.5.
that make
Okay.
sense?
So that's what,
Sorry about that.
so that's what you were saying, Sandy. at
Yeah,
the
I
back,
wasn't
right.
understanding what that, was.
Yeah, there is some grading from the house out to the wall.
Okay, I had another question. I noticed on the back patio that it looks like one of the D boxes for the septic will be under the patio. Do you have any plans on how they would get at that if there's a problem?
Technically, the patio could be temporarily removed. That's a good comment, and I'd prefer to just move the D-box over in front of the other elbow. It's hard to explain, but I can just move the D-box out from underneath the patio.
I know, I have the same problem at my house. They built the deck over the, so I'm just very conscious
I would just
of that.
slide it left in front of the other chamber. Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, then I was just wondering, on the lawn area, what type, have you thought about a mixture of clover or?
I mean, we prefer a lawn that would just meet the standard based on, amount of fertilizer and stuff like that, being how limited it is. That's our request, but if the commission
Oh, I just-
asks for something different, we can talk about it.
Oh, and could you give me the square footage of the old house? I don't know if you did at the beginning and I missed it, in the new square footage again?
So by the terminology of structure for Mashpee, so on the image on the left side, the tan areas represent 1,590 square feet, but that would include the 97 square foot shed and the decks. You know, that's the structure per definition. I don't, right with me right now, I don't have the footprint of the house. But I have the structure footprint, which is 1,590 square feet. And the structure footprint of the new house will be increasing to 1,755. So, less than 200 square feet. And I think you can see that on the west side, it's right on the existing house. The rear, it's right on the existing house. The right, it's right on the existing deck. It's in the front where you can see the words plants in gray. There's about a 4-foot increase in the front. Is probably that 180 difference in square feet. So, it is a little bit bigger.
It would just be nice to have those on the plan when we look at it. But
Yeah.
just a comment.
I mean, we can.
Were you looking for the footprint or the interior
Well,
square footage?
Footprint, basically, yeah. Okay. I had some. I had another question, now I can't remember. Okay.
All set?
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? Sarah?
Yeah, I had a couple questions. Hi, Mark. I just wanted to confirm my understanding that the house is currently occupied and currently has a cesspool. Is that right?
Per the records we received, correct.
Okay. Okay. Great. And then the need to rebuild is flood zone compliance? Is that?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. I do want to echo some of the concerns of my fellow commissioners on water flow, especially here. I understand that the plan as presented meets the current base flood elevation. Looking at the data that we have available to us through CZM, Coastal Zone Management, and then NOAA, this house is going to be underwater with a Category 1 hurricane surge. And we're looking at, by I think 2070, the numbers are 6 feet of sea level rise modeled for this particular parcel. So I do think it's significant to consider the channelization and how that would change the velocity of floodwaters in terms of erosion and property damage, and then also groundwater pollution concerns. And so I would feel better if we had an assessment from like a coastal geologist, looking at the plan, looking at the adjacent structures. I understand it would be great if we could have planned this whole neighborhood altogether and not parcel by parcel, but this is what we have to work with, and we're looking at this parcel. So I would actually like to see something from a consultant or an expert to speak to the recommendations for the retaining wall in particular, for how that water flow is going to be affected, because this is going to be an issue very soon, whether it's the current owners or the future owners of the home. So that's just my opinion. But.
Something else? Steve?
Yeah, Mark, what's the material on the retaining wall?
Again, I called out either retaining wall or landscape wall. It would just be a standard block, similar to the last discussion, an 8-inch landscape block
segmented
wall. Yeah.
Block, okay. And then on the light tan areas, they're not noted. I see the brown is the walkways, you have the orange for native shrub. What's in the tan areas?
They should be noted.
I didn't see a note going to that.
Up top, it says native and/or ornamental plantings. Is that area?
It is, and then it was supposed to be represented up in the planting notes. I was offering a minimum of 33% of those areas being native species, so another 376 square feet, and then the rest, a minimum. The client may install all of them, it all native. But yeah, that tan area was supposed to represent that 33% mix.
Yeah. I'm just not comfortable with the channels on both sides, on the north and west side, and there's no dimensions to it. It's like, I know you're showing grass in there, and there's gonna be access there between, but I'm just not comfortable with that channel, because we ran into that on, was it Greenwood and Bears?
Same exact.
Same exact thing, right? And then they worked that out to tie the walls in
Single
together.
wall, right.
Yeah.
Because the other owner was,
Yeah, who's
On
working
board.
on it, but,
Right.
you know, if we can eliminate those channels by pushing a wall up against the property line, then it takes a future issue away, so.
I can look into that. I mean, like kind of a technical question. If we were to get permission to, per se, on the west side, grade up to that wall, you know, so it'll end up being a wall, but will be 6 inches onto the property, onto the other property. Would just written permission be enough, or would the whole thing have to be modified to include, you know, the whole filing have to be modified to include 2 lots?
Well,
You know, kind of a technicality question.
you would absolutely need full-fledged permission for that. It's not just a,
Right, yeah, no, we would get the written permission, but then, you know, would this have to be filed?
I would think, wouldn't
With
it be an
both property
easement that would
noted.
have to be filed?
there would have to be some kind of, I'd have to look into that more. I can't answer that right now.
You know,
For if
we
it's a
have to
separate
almost,
filing or
like,
added to this.
We have to almost like withdraw and come back with 2 properties being
I
advertised.
can ask
and-
in light of that. So this section here, right here, it's just looking like there's nothing going there, just revegetating however it revegetates. Is that the idea?
The lighter green?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd be setting up that work limit, the erosion control work limit, and trying not to touch that area,
So
correct?
with these spot grades you're seeing, 7,
Yep.
you know, you get 8, there's a massive tree there. You can even see it in the photo here. In the very far back, big tree. There's a little tiny storage shed than an actual real shed, I guess as I'll call it. I guess my question is, with this channelization, that would get cut down for velocity if there was some kind of rain garden, literally a hole in the ground with some vegetation or even some gravel. I don't want to say a hole in the ground just filled with gravel. I mean like an actual cone-shaped hole in the ground with gravel or plantings. Whether it be native plantings, or not whether it be, but it would be native plantings or something like that. I think that would help curb the channelization of this. It would avoid your concern that you just had, which is very legit, because I just don't have an answer for that. I just don't know if the property owner would be up for that. I think that would solve a lot of these issues here. Not if the whole section, but if part of that section was made into some sort of rain garden to stop any channelization to reduce the velocity of the water flowing. You know, it'd be kind of like the water hitting a puddle and just pooling up and then overflowing out if it got that bad. So I think that might help with the channelization concerns. It would definitely help with the velocity concerns of the water if that event ever occurred. So I don't know if that would be an option.
Okay, I can look into that.
All right.
Anything else?
I just have one more question.
Yes.
The rinse station that's going in, is that going to be going into the septic system?
No.
I thought that had to be now when you put a rinse station in.
Going to dry well?
I thought-
These are weird things these are under Board of Health. Board of Health is aware. They have their own code for these.
I thought they all had to be connected to the,
I'm not aware. is
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
don't
saying.
know.
I
I'm not
do know
sure.
Board of Health will get into that. They'll consider it, it's considered a hand wash or some kind of gray water station or something like that.
and not a shower.
Essentially, yeah, basically. So however they want to deal with that, but I'm not trying to say it's Board of Health. I just don't know the regulation, but I do know it comes up in their hearings.
Maybe if it's a shower, it has to be, and if it's.
If
just
it's a shower, if it's just a wash station for hands,
Yeah,
it might be a
yeah.
little different. I just don't know. So I don't know what you're classifying that as.
I can review that with
that?
the,
All right.
with Health
Do
Department.
we have a list of things that Mark needs to bring back to us?
I got it.
Okay,
I've been keeping track.
okay.
That includes the recommendations from the comments, too?
I have not, whatever's been spoken right here, right now, I have.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so you're
And
going
we'll get
I'll
to
get
those.
those.
Okay.
Anything else? Mark, I have a quick question on the calculations for nitrogen. I don't know if you have those in front of you. Okay, on the proposed conditions, there's a figure for the Title V design, and you've got the flow, and you've got the nitrogen, and it comes out to 25 milligrams per liter with this IA system. And then the actual figures, I'm wondering, where do those figures come from? The 214.5 and the 520.5. Is that something from a computer program, or how do you come up with that?
That is, just,
Because if you calculate that, it comes out to 34.99 parts per million. So I'm having a hard time with a system that's designed for 25, and the actual flow comes out at 34.99.
water from
It just caught my eye that actual is nowhere near design.
In general, Title V flows are 2 times actual design.
2 times actual?
Yeah.
Okay.
However, this is not exactly 2 times. It's a little bit more. I can just review that and just make sure it's accurate and get you an answer on
Right.
that.
And a general question that I have, because we're getting these all the time because of what we had changed in Regulation 30. In the end, your calculation comes out to 14.13 and some change. And the reason it drops down is that you're calculating in the mitigation water loads coming from the lawn, the roof, wherever. And I think that's based on the annual precipitation rate for this area. So how does that water mitigate the amount of ppm that's coming out of the tank when none of it is mixed in with the tank itself? It's kind of like a closed system. It's in that tank, it's coming out, it's gone into your chambers and down into the groundwater. So I get that it's a total look at the lot, and maybe it's something we have to go back and look at in Regulation 30. It really doesn't, the water coming from these other sources, it doesn't mitigate or bring down the nitrogen concentration coming from that septic flow. That point source discharge is what it is.
Most of what's bringing it down is just the IA unit itself.
But it doesn't show that here. It's
It
actually
does,
going up.
with the concentration, the number, you'll see to the right, you'll see without, on the existing, without IA, the concentration's 35 milligrams per liter.
On the existing, okay,
In
yep.
existing, and then with it is the 25. So that's the biggest reduction, that's causing the biggest reduction in nitrogen, is just the system itself.
Again, that's design. Even your actuals in existing are identical to the actuals in proposed. So you're looking at the true flow coming from that 3-bedroom home.
Yeah,
So that's what
believe
I'm
that's
interested in, because that's what's going into the
that
groundwater.
number is derived through like a 3-bedroom home. A census is like 4 people on average, but I can get that exact breakdown of that number back to you.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because we're seeing these all the time, and I, for the life of me, I can't understand how water coming off the roof on a rainy day, or a day it's not raining, how does that reduce the overall impact of the nitrogen that's getting into the groundwater from that septic system? And I know the IA is a much better system, but I think it's a smoke and mirrors type of thing. I think when you, at the end of the day, whatever's coming out of that tank and it's getting into that leach field, that's going directly into the groundwater. And it's at a rate of less than 2 minutes an inch. So it's there in a matter of 2 hours. So my concern is not so much with this project and your figures, but I asked another engineer earlier tonight about figures. And every time I get them, I'm going to keep asking these questions, because I really think that this commission needs to go back and revisit Regulation 30 to make it a little more stringent than what it is. But yeah, if you can get me some information based on what you're presenting here, or at least verify that, that might be helpful.
And I'm going to revise, this was submitted with the original filing, and then the comment from Drew on the lawn area came back.
Yeah.
I thought your question was going to be, why is there 3,600 square feet of lawn? in the proposed, so that's actually gone way down now, because we
Right.
did so I'll also update that number. That'll bring
right.
down the loading. But,
Latest
yeah.
interest has been the flow coming out of these tanks.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you. I think the key is when you're comparing, I mean, this is an existing 3-bedroom going to a 3-bedroom with IA, so
Right.
it's just automatically, it should be an improvement on nitrogen. It's when you really have to carefully analyze when you have an existing 3-bedroom and you want to go to like a 4-bedroom IA, is it really more or less nitrogen coming in and out? You know, that's a key thing. But when you are looking at a 3-bedroom to 3-bedroom and you're just adding something that's removing nitrogen, you kind of know it's at least better. You know, it's obviously better. But I agree that all the surrounding stuff might not be
it shouldn't have a bearing on
what your
what's going
goal
on with
is.
the
Yeah, you really want to just focus on, you know, what the flow coming out of the system is.
Yeah.
How much is this IA treating it, and is it better or worse or the same? Or, yeah, I
So
do
that-
actually
that
kind
begs
of
the
agree with that.
revisiting of Reg 30. Okay. Anything else, Dan, that you wanted to add before I go to the public?
Not really, I just want to double check comment. But no, everything was pretty much covered by Drew in the prior comments. Yeah, I have a list we'll go through. I would imagine you're probably going to be requesting continuance. So we'll go through that list once they get through that. But no, the biggest concern is always channelization, as well as the biggest concern in the beginning was the lawn area. So we'll just see where the revisions come back and the concerns come back and all the Reg 30 and everything. So nothing from me.
Okay. Questions from the public? No, I guess we're set there. So we're looking down the road for a continuance here?
Yeah. So you can go January 23rd, or you can go into February.
You had one on the 6th or something like that?
Yes, sir. So February 6th.
Well, let's do the 23rd. We do have a ZBA hearing on the 12th of February. We'd like to answer your questions, but let's do the 23rd. I believe I can thoroughly answer the questions, and then if there's anything left, we can.
Okay, 123. And we're not putting times on these, Mark, so, we'll set it up. And generally, what we're doing from this point forward is taking RDAs and easier types of projects and saving the NOIs that get a little more complex for later in the meeting. Okay, so we have the request for 123. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Steve.
Second.
Thank you, Alex. You've got your laundry list, so we don't have to repeat that? We're good?
If you have questions, you can email Dan.
Thank you.
I always follow up on Fridays. It's a busy morning.
There you go.
Don't worry about that.
Any questions on the motion that we have? Deliberations, nothing? We're good? Alex?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right.
All right. Reading marathon is about to begin.
He had a family thing he had to take off for. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Okay. Okay. Second.
Okay. Yes.
So now, are you here on the 23rd, or
And since he's now back.
Yes, I am going to be here. My
Message me, just
vacation
said
has been canceled.
been canceled? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry to hear that, so.
Yeah, some things came up. Let me call the 119 Daniels Island Road and 15 Waterway, New Seabury Homes LLC. This is construction and maintenance of a new single-family dwelling, associated appurtenances, Title V, septic system, landscaping and mitigation. Representative is BSC Group, owner of record, New Seabury Properties LLC. This is a notice of intent, file number 433326. We have a request to continue this hearing. Hold on. I thought it was on this list, but I don't see it.
I don't see it either.
I think there was a specific date, Dan, wasn't there?
Yeah, they wanted a date. February 6th.
There's a re-
They were the first ones.
There was a request to continue this to February 6th, and the rationale for it was the paperwork for the Board of Health and the ZBA
Yes.
has not been filed, and as you know, according to our regulations, I believe it's Regulation 3E, all paperwork has to be submitted before it's a complete application, and we can open the hearing, so we're on hold. So that's the rationale.
All right.
I'll
Can they
accept them.
provide a set of house building plans? Because we're running into this a lot, where they're submitting one set of plans to ZBA and Board of Health, and another set of plans to
I
us.
will, I'll definitely let them know, that's for certain, that that's being requested. But just so everyone knows, when it comes to the ZBA for this one, they do have to go before the ZBA. I know there was a question of it at first, because they are a New Seabury special permit area, but but because of the flood zone and all regulations in town, they do have to go before the ZBA now. So that was the whole reason they didn't originally. So they will be going for it. I'll let them know to get us any plans and any, you asking for floor plans or?
Floor plans, elevations.
Okay.
Lower level plan, everything.
Okay.
Square footage
Full set of plans that they submit to ZBA.
on the plans.
Right. All plans should be the same to each board. That's in our regulation as well.
Yep. So I will let them know whatever they're submitting to ZBA, send it right to us so I can send it to the commission.
All right.
We'll just do it that way.
Thanks.
Okay, so the motion's been made, and
Seconded.
did you make the motion?
No, we haven't.
Sorry.
So I'll make it now, so moved.
Second.
To February 6th.
Yes.
February 6th. Made and second. Alex has got the second on that, Dan. Any other questions, deliberations? Hearing none. Alex?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I'm yes as well, so that's unanimous. The next hearing is 42 Sandy Way, Charles E. and Michelle C. Torgey, is it? Torgey? Proposed septic system upgrade. Representative is GeoCape Environmental Consultants. This is an RDA that's been continued from December 12th. We also have a request to continue this to January 23rd, our next meeting. Apparently, the materials that the commission has asked for
Yeah.
weren't finished.
With the holiday season and the New Year's, he could not find a plumber to even give an estimate or concept or thoughts on the job.
On the pipes in the
Just,
basement.
yeah, going out the front, just couldn't do it. And he doesn't want to proceed with anything because if they do go out the front, if they're capable to do it, the system will have to go partly under the driveway. Right now, it is a system that's not load-bearing, so that will change the entire design for the system. So he wants to know if they can to even proceed with changing the plans, because there's no need to do it. No need to change the system on the plans, if it's not going to need to be a load-bearing system. So
Right.
they need to go through all that, they need to see if it's feasible, and he just hasn't had a plumber yet to
Okay.
take a look at it.
Yeah, I stopped by there today. It's pretty steep.
Yeah.
Very much so.
That's a real
And very
steep
wooded.
drop.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a failed septic system backing
Yes.
up against the marsh there,
Red Brook,
right?
yeah.
Is there any risk? I mean, this has now been failed for a while, and we kind of kicked it based
Yes.
on...
So that there is a risk if they don't pump it. If they're not doing their routine, I don't know if it's weekly or bi-weekly, I honestly couldn't tell you. But if they're not routinely pumping it, it would then become a point source pollution that needs to be taken care of immediately. That's a different process completely, but they are pumping it, so as of right now, it is a hazard, it is an issue, but since they're pumping it, it's not point source leaching into the soil. So legalities from there, but that's the concept of it, yeah.
So we've got kind of a check on this, that
Oh,
if
the-
this drifts, this one, seems to be drifting a little bit,
So
for good
thi-
reason and
yeah.
not any...
This is already filed with the Board of
malintent.
Health. So they filed this with the Board of Health, I don't know, before us or right at the same time as us. So I talked to the Board of Health agent, they're 100% aware and they are monitoring it themselves, yeah.
Cool.
And I believe the owner mentioned that it was being pumped monthly at our last meeting.
I mean, they seemed very diligent when they came last.
It's failed, they got to deal with it.
Yeah, he just, as he said, he's no expert, he just wants to have it done as soon as possible, that's all.
Okay, so I'll accept the motion on this.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve.
Second.
Thank you, Alex. Any other questions or comments? Roll call vote. Alex?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That motion carries.
Everything to start signing.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to skip over the COCs right now because there are a whole slew of them to read in, and I'm going to go to the public hearing for the amendments to Chapter 173, Regulation 1, the draft for Mashpee Conservation Lands. As you know, we have spent some time with the regulations for this, Regulation 1. We, in subcommittee, looked at this, brought before the commission the draft, listened to the questions of commissioners on that draft. We edited those questions and concerns. This draft has been forwarded to legal counsel, and as presented tonight, this has been okayed by legal counsel. So we are taking the opportunity to present this new Regulation 1 for Chapter 173, and looking for questions and comments from the commissioners as to where we are with it right now. So I'll open it up first to the commission for anything that you would have to offer. You've had a chance to look through the draft, and legal is okay with it. There was a question about the fine that was in there, whether it would be levied by us or the select board, and I believe that was clarified at our last meeting. And other than that, I don't think there was any other issues from legal on that.
I mean, if it's easier to just keep it how it is, that's fine. And I haven't commented on it in the past, so it's kind of unfair for me to do so tonight, but it would have been nice if the paragraph about what the Mashpee Conservation Commission welcomes on the property was like the first paragraph, rather than starting with the word no. Just is a form of good practice. I mean,
Stroke, slap.
right, like I think it should just be bumped up and then bumped down, and I don't know that the one needs to be there, but, and then, I just think it would read better, but.
Yep. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I would agree. I think I did comment on this before, and I didn't make it in here, but similarly, I think the fact that we're putting in boldface that all of the prohibited activities are subject to a fine, at the end of it is just, it seems kind of aggressive and not necessarily welcoming of people to come onto the land. And then I do agree that the first one, the one there, just formatting wise, it seems
Doesn't need
kind
to
of
be there.
arbitrary, and we're listing all the things that we have a bullet list for later on. And I do also want to call out that the last paragraph before the fine call out is language that we've included for Aboriginal rights for members of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. This language was taken from the 2022 shellfish regulations, and I do just want to point out that we've added where it previously read to access water and land to hunt, fish, forage, and gather for sustenance. We've now added reasonably access water and land to hunt, fish, forage, or gather for sustenance. So I just wanted to call that out, make sure that we're aware of that addition. We may have to adjudicate what reasonably means. But
So it's the word reasonably access, those two words, reasonably access.
yeah, that was in addition to the language that was in the 2022 shellfish regulations
Right,
pertaining to Aboriginal rights. So,
okay. Anything else from commissioners? No? Okay. Dan, anything you'd like to offer?
No?
You're good? Let me go out to the public. If there's somebody that would like to speak, this would be an opportunity. Okay. I'd
I
accept.
do have a quick comment just on
Okay,
Sarah's question about the reasonable access.
Sure.
So the reason I recommended using that word is because it really pertains to vehicle access. And it doesn't mean that, permission couldn't be granted for vehicle access for specific purposes. But in general, vehicle access is something that created a lot of problems on our conservation lands previously before we put up the gates. And led to, substantial illegal dumping and vandalism, and safety issues too with hikers. So that's why reasonable act, the word reasonable is put in there, because I know there's been, concerns from the public about gating off our conservation lands from vehicle access, but I did check with council a while back that the Aboriginal rights, while we can accommodate vehicle access, it's not, even in federal law, it doesn't acknowledge vehicle access. It actually uses the word reasonable access, which I do believe we provide. So that's the rationale for that use of the word reasonable.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I would accept a motion on whether you want to vote this as is or not. I mean, if you don't want it the way it is, then we would have to go back and alter and change those areas that have been brought up. You want a more positive?
Consider those editing comments, in that you're talking about moving a paragraph and unbolding some language, so the
Taking away
verbiage is
one.
all,
Right.
the verbiage is all there, so I think.
It has to do with public release of the document, and it has to do with what's being reviewed by the commission. So if there are any changes, and since it is a bylaw, it has to go right back to the bylaw review, rearrange and
through the
change.
process.
It's just a
I
process,
understand, but
yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
Yeah, silly process, I agree. But it's all to make sure the public is 100% aware of the whole process, to make sure it goes through the right reins and everything, so that's why. I wish.
It probably is not.
So this is,
material.
well, from what I'm hearing, if this is what we will pursue, as a member of the subcommittee, I would like people to specifically type out what the issue is with this, because we could be going back and forth forever.
Honestly,
I don't
Paul,
want to do that.
I don't have time for that. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, right, the
That
benefit.
paragraph
But we
just needs
wanna
to go at the
take-
top.
We want to take the one out, right? At
Take
the
the
top.
one out. Move the paragraph about the Mashpee Conservation Commission welcomes the public enjoyment of these tranquil areas to the top underneath where it says Regulation 1.
That
And,
goes up to the top.
and then,
Unbold the fine language,
Unbold,
fine language.
define.
Yep.
You want that in standard font.
and then you can change the one word of, by the following regulations
By the following,
to say,
not where you are. where-
yeah, so just this paragraph that's bumping up to the top, then that last sentence won't make sense. So it can just say,
You can't just text this to Paul so that we're not.
Yeah.
Alex?
I'm not pulling this back up again later. I have so
I
many
know,
other
but-
things.
Yeah.
So, no, so just by abiding by the following, period, or below, and then that's it. I don't think, it's not changing
No, it's okay.
the substance at all.
No, it's not.
Just rearrange it.
So
Just
it-
rearranging it and
It's
just,
editing.
just making the words,
I just wanted to make sure we had it rearranged the right way. It won't have to
You're
go
right,
back to
'cause it will be
legal. There's
back
no
again. Yeah.
Okay.
no issues there.
That's my point.
Just a competing thought, too. You know, my understanding is that what necessitated the need for this revision is that there was some confusion amongst the public around whether or not trail cameras were permitted
That's
on the
what started it.
conservation lands. And so I'm wondering if these small formatting edits and then all of the time it's going to take to integrate them to do this again is going to be beneficial if we're not changing the content versus moving this through now, so at
Right.
least we have this in the regulations.
right.
And keeping it in mind for next time. So just something to think about. Do we want to get this on the record now so that confusion around that particular issue or anything else is
Yeah.
already, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't think we're substantially changing the
No,
content.
you're
This
not
is just
changing the content
presentation,
at all.
No.
right?
It's polish, that's all it is.
Yeah.
Right. And we do have the opportunity for outreach and education with the public around this, so we could implement some of these, strategies there too.
Catch
So.
the next time.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Okay, so
Sorry, if I was.
I would accept,
I get it.
would accept the motion to promulgate this draft.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve.
Second.
Thank you, Alex. Any further comments? Hearing none, let me take a roll call vote. Alex?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you.
And what we'll do, we'll send that off to the town clerk, so they can update their records of our regulation under this chapter 173 bylaw. And we'll make the changes to the website, link to it as well.
And Drew, while you're on the floor, can I ask you, in terms of a grace period on this, would it be the same as the other regulations that we've formatted?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess you just want to stipulate, what that grace period is.
I believe it was
Your discretion as far as.
I think it was 14 days on the others.
Yeah, I think that's fine, that's reasonable.
Okay. Okay, great. Let me go back to the certificates of compliances. And I believe I have to do these one at a time, correct?
COCs?
Yeah,
Yeah, just the address thing passed.
right, okay. So we have as you know, a list of
No,
certificates.
to me, because I'm leaving at 9, so can I start?
Certificate of compliances for 37 Keel Way.
Thank you.
The first one is 37 Keel Way, Stephen and Louise D. Barish, trustees.
How about Papaneset Island Road, 24?
Yeah, I'll get these Keel Ways first, and I'll grab that one. And these are from the Barish Mashpee Realty Trust. The first one is DEP file number 43210, and that has passed. The second one, same corporation. It is the Certificate of Compliance, DEP file number 43543. The next one is the same address and owners and trust. Certificate of Compliance, DEP file number 43543. That's a double print because it's the same as the last one, right?
Right.
That's a typo. Okay. The next one is 37 Keel Way, the same owners, same trustee, Certificate of Compliance, DEP file number 43751. The next one is the same address, 37 Keel Way, same owners, same trust, COC DEP number 431908. These have all passed inspection. The next one is 37 Keel Way, same owners, same trust, COC for 431930, and that has also passed. So those are on the record now, and the last one is 24 Pompanesett Island Road, 260 Heath Street Realty Trust. This is Certificate of Compliance 43975, and that has passed inspection as well. So as these documents come around, you can sign on the appropriate lines. Those are all finished up, and that concludes the hearings of our meeting. Let me go up to the minutes that have been presented. The first one is September 26th, 2024. These are the executive session minutes. Those eligible to vote would be myself, Steve, Sandy, Rich, and Sarah. Do you have time to take a look at those? And we're all set? Those minutes will not be released until that executive session, until that issue in the executive session has been resolved. But we can at least get the minutes from that first executive session accepted. So if you're all set with that, I would accept a motion from non-person voting.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Sarah. No further questions?
That was Sandy that made the
Oh,
second.
thank you,
Yep,
Sandy.
so it's the master.
Well, it's good to get it
Yes.
right. I'll take a roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So those minutes are in. The second set of minutes are the same date, September 26, 2024. It is the open session hearing. Those people that can vote on this are myself, Steve, Sandy, Rich, and Sarah. Did you have a chance to look at those?
Yes.
We're good? Everything's good on that? Okay, I'd accept the motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Second. Thank you, Sandy. No further discussion, questions? Roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. The next set of minutes is October 24th, 2024. Open session hearing. Those eligible to vote are myself, Sandy, Alex, and Rich. Any comments or questions on those? We good? We're good. Doing a good job, Alyssa. No problems yet.
They're awesome.
Roll call vote. Sandy?
Did we
I'll
do
make
a
a motion to
Oh,
accept.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So
I'll make
moved.
the-
So moved. Yeah.
Alex, and the second is Sandy.
Yeah.
Okay. No further questions. Roll call vote. Sandy?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. The last set of minutes are November 7th, 2024. That's open session hearing. Those eligible to vote are myself, Steve, Sandy, Rich, and Sarah. Get a chance to check those out. We okay with that?
Yes.
Everything's good? Motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Second?
Yes.
Thank you, Sandy. No further questions or discussion. Roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So all of the minutes are in. We move to discussion. The first thing I will take is the draft 7 of Regulation 25. This is a discussion on the performance standards. The subcommittee met 2 different times since our last meeting. We made as many changes and edits as were requested by commissioners. We took the time to look through the September 4th letter from Beals and Thomas that the Papaneset Bay Association provided. I found, in my copy of it, I highlighted at least a minimum of 11 different issues and went through the regulations, and we either made edits or saw the issues as irrelevant. So we felt as though we adequately addressed the concerns that were there. We went through in the draft 6.1 that Drew had put together. We looked at every one of the commissioners' comments. Some of them were duplicate concerns from one performance standard to another. So in this draft 7, as you see it, and I think if you look at it, it's highlighted in yellow, the new sections. In some areas, we combined some of the regulations. For example, 1 and 2 from the old regulation on 6, 1 and 2 performance standards are just a single performance standard. Oh, I'm sorry. That was our original intent in the first meeting. And then in the second meeting, we actually kept them as 2, but you can see that there's a tremendous change in the wording of Performance Standard 1. Basically, I believe that we ended up taking, I think it was Sarah's recommendation, and taking 14, which looked duplicative, and we moved that up and combined it into number 1. Performance Standard 5, we are going to leave this the way it is because it's taken directly from the town of Tisbury's performance standards for land subject to coastal flow. It does require a much stricter approach than what the Title V regulations call for. Be that as it is, it's there to protect the water quality, or lack thereof, that we have here in Mashpee. So the subcommittee feels as though this should go forward to at least legal counsel for their interpretation on 5. We may have to strike that. We may have to alter the numbers. I don't know. Number 7, we did change letter A in number 7, the new construction and placement of new structures piece. And some of the more substantial changes, if you look at page 2 of this, when you look at the presumptions of significance, down at the bottom, LSCSF, that whole section, what we did was we took out the sea level rise section from sealevelrise.org because the figures in that were so historical, I guess, rather than current and looking toward the future. And we went for what exactly we found from the presentations that the experts have come in to talk with us about, Cape Cod Commission and Coastal Zone Management, and what's found on the mass.gov website. And we came up with the figures from the Woods Hole group, which is all of the data that goes into the Morris Data Viewer. And it can't get any better than this. I mean, this is real-time data that's coming from the Woods Hole tidal gauges. It's a stone's throw down the shoreline, so whatever they're getting there, that's what we're getting here. And the figures are alarming. I know that, and I've been talking about this for quite some time. But those are in the characteristics and the presumptions of significance. And if you look closely, those are also part of the performance standards because that's the very first one, that anything that's found in the critical characteristics and presumption of significance.
So Paul, can I just?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna take us back, but.
Sure.
7A, right?
7A.
This doesn't step on the ability to raise and replace though, right? Correct?
No.
Okay.
No, it's really looking at working with buildings that are being raised and replaced and making sure that in the process, there's not a tremendous expansion of impervious surfaces because we are in the floodplain.
So, and I'm just gonna, because I think this has been a very, key focus of a lot of the public, right, on this area. So when we say existing buildings, right?
Yep.
And you think about a raise and replace is totally taking the building down, that would not trigger that then for us to look at that as new construction.
No, because that's what's called your legally permitted footprint. And that footprint is not geospatial. It doesn't have to be exactly where it is. If it can be shifted over 5 feet or 10 feet, to a more positive situation, terrific.
Then I'm gonna go back to something in the definitions.
Yep.
That I had a question on, and it is regarding the building footprint.
Okay.
And here, and refers to all previously legally permitted total footage of square footage of structures and apertures. Why is previous in there? Why is the word previous there?
Which one is this?
Which one? It's the building footprints it's a definition.
Previous legally permitted total square footage of structures and appurtenances.
Because you wouldn't be able to have a new building footprint.
Right.
So again, is that and then
Right.
conflict here,
Because,
right, again?
yeah,
back to-
I think what we're trying to refer to is the building that's coming down.
Right.
That's the historic previous
Building
structure.
footprint would be what's there
Previous
before.
structure. So I have a building that I'm gonna tear down for a raise and replace, and it's 2,000 square feet, okay? That's my previous legal footprint.
Yep, I get it.
So when I make my new building, it's gonna have to be that footprint, 2,000 square feet. Now, there's always the waiver, because if I have 2,000 square feet, and I'm contained to 2,000 square feet, I'm in the flood zone, I have to move all my mechanicals up. And we heard this loud and clear from the Cape Cod Commission.
So why isn't it just legal? Why doesn't it just refer to all legally permitted?
A lot of it's
because,
grandfathered in, I think, right?
but also when we get projects.
I might be going
from-
down a rabbit hole.
No,
here, but
no,
it's-
I see what you're saying now. So we
see what
we get projects here where a property hasn't applied for a permit in 30 years. And then all of a sudden, we go to see what they have, and the last legal thing they had permitted was 800 square feet.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, on their whole property as a whole, they have like 3,200 square feet of
But that
stuff.
still would be the
But they
legal
didn't
fo-
legally go through the Wetlands Protection Act or the Conservation Commission to get that approved.
But their
So-
legal footprint would have been what was on file, right? With-
What's on file, but when they're on
File.
file was 800 and they're at, 1,000,
So
3,000.
That's their issue, right?
Yeah,
So that
exactly.
You're going back to their legal footprint, is 800 square feet.
And we've had that, one of the most recent ones was with the salt marsh. The salt marsh got altered sometime in the 60s or 70s or who knows when. And part of the deal was, let that salt marsh grow back in this area. Don't keep mowing it for grass. That's not your legal footprint. You didn't get that permitted. It just happened to
Can
happen.
we just make sure that when we run this through legal, that
Well,
there's
that's where I'm
no-
gonna go
that-
next.
that that's
Oh, yes.
flag, that there's
So,
no.
here's where we
kind of
are.
conflict there
That's their
or-
job.
huh?
Yeah,
Huh?
that's their job.
to catch it.
Oh,
But you want me to
They
mark
will.
the,
They
do
will.
you want me to, for legal purposes, you want to mark the actual, review the definition here, make sure it's not
I
in
just want to make
conflict
sure
with the other?
previous is.
Okay, yeah,
is a
they'll
good-
catch it.
Good,
We have the steps were already outlined. Drew and I went to the select board. There was a lot of questions about Regulation 25 and how it's proceeding. We went through the procedure steps. We're still up here on this first bullet. We're nowhere near getting to a final draft that we can do what we did tonight with Chapter 173's conservation lands. What I would like to see tonight is a consensus of the commission, not a vote, just a consensus to say, this is getting to look pretty solid, it's getting to look pretty good.
I think this is like me nitpicking on
Well,
stuff, but,
It's kind of like we did earlier with that last,
You need to go through the details,
yeah,
not
I
really
mean, yeah,
nitpicking.
so I mean, that's just kind of like.
the final product wants to be as perfect as it can be. Kind of like earlier, when we take this one out and take this boldface out, we'll do as much as we can. When you look at this, compared to what you looked at the last time,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like
and
night
like I
and
said
day.
at the beginning.
We
this
did a
is
ton of
like-
work on
is-
this.
This is really much tighter, and I think if you're saying a document that's ready to get presented to the public for substantial comments on it, I think
Right.
we are there.
And this is, so
Yeah.
once it's discussed here at the meeting, even if it's not ratified, the public can request it. So there is as you may know, there's a lot of residents in town who have and who do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So my
Yeah,
thought
what
is.
I would suggest is that, when Paul and I discussed it and Sandy, the bylaw review, is to get a consensus, like Paul said, get it off the legal. And if any of the commissioners have questions that they want to kind of highlight for legal to focus on, I would suggest just email that to us, to Dan and I, and then we can include those questions when we submit it to legal. For the purposes of tonight, we want to just, hopefully get a consensus on, this recent draft, is it ready to go to legal? And then we can, obviously vet it out from there.
Yep. And as I said earlier, there are several more steps to go before we would be in any shape to say, here's a final draft, let's schedule a hearing for promulgation like we scheduled one tonight for conservation lands. But as a subcommittee member that's been working on this for close to 2 years, I think it's time for this to at least get shipped to legal. Let them take a pass through it, and we could still have a lot more work than we even know. But then again, as you said, Shauna, we might be pretty tight with this, and there's just a little bit of window dressing that has to be done here and there, and we could be okay to move further down the road. So that's what I'm looking for tonight. It's just a consensus from the commission itself to ship this over.
I get some whole bunch of concerns.
Yep.
Want me to list them now, or do you want me to put them into an email?
I'd like to get them in an email, Steve, and
Okay.
get them off to the subcommittee, all the members of the subcommittee, and that includes Dan. So we have them, and then,
Yeah, that would be the best, because then they'll have it in writing and they can just go over it in the subcommittee, literally bullet
Okay.
by bullet together. So,
Yep.
yeah.
So that goes for any concerns you want, email and.
Email, please,
Okay.
yeah, if you have any last-minute things, fire them in. Yep.
So not
Send out
now,
the draft
in an
and then
email.
nobody
Yeah,
sends any
I
comments
don't
in,
see
and so
that.
we get here and, look at all these
Okay.
comments.
This isn't a final discussion, we're going to ask to accept this as law. I mean, I just wanted to get to a point where we can get legal eyes on this, because there are some things. I know Performance Standard 5, I'm very curious to see how that fares with the legal department.
Okay.
Okay? So we'll get those emailed in ASAP.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not 2
And
weeks from
I'd
now.
like to get
Do you-
this thing shipped off
Do you
next
want it
week.
by Monday? What's the deadline for these?
Next Friday would be fantastic.
Next Friday?
Or next Thursday, I mean, would be fantastic. So Friday, we can put it together, and then we can get it all out to review subcommittee.
Okay.
And The sooner they meet, the better.
Yeah.
I don't know when the next meeting is.
We haven't scheduled
So,
that.
Yeah, so the sooner the better, but next Thursday I
By
would think
next
would be the
Thursday.
latest, yeah.
So these concerns that are being emailed are just going with this to legal.
Yeah, we can send it right to legal.
Yeah,
That's-
that's what I was thinking, is send your email comments in, and we can include that in a request for legal services. We have
Right.
to make an official request for anytime we need legal advice, we have to go through a formal process for that. And I would just include everybody's comment by email along with that request.
Okay. And Drew, in terms of the time frame of going through town manager's office and getting the paperwork set up to do this, what do you see as the ideal date to get individual emails from commissioners?
I would say if we can get them in within the next 2 weeks, because I know it's a lot to absorb. So if that sounds reasonable to everybody, try to get them in by 2 weeks from today.
Okay.
So the
that
next
would be
meeting.
ideal.
Okay,
So have them in by the next meeting date, so the 23rd, January 23rd.
by our next meeting date. Okay. Okay. Any other questions on that? We're good? Let me see what else we have here. Tribal co-management focus group discussion is next. I'm going to turn that over to you, Dan.
All right, so we have commissioners that reached out, so we do have a focus group. So the commissioners that reached out are Sarah, Shauna, and Paul. So that would be the focus group itself, that we are going to meet with the tribe members, tribal members of the focus, and we're going to discuss the co-management. So that's what I wanted to announce tonight. I just talked to the tribe as well. So they're pretty excited to see this starting up. They're even more excited that there was interest from the commissioners right away. So what I'm going to do next is tomorrow I'm going to send out kind of like a packet. There's going to be some web addresses that are mainly to the University of Washington State Law. Their law college has, I'd say, one of the best systems right now for tribal law in the country, from anything you want to find. So I will send that over, and the main reason is it outlines point by point what co-stewardship is and what co-management is, how it's worked in every state in the country, as well as exactly what it's looking for and exactly what you are not looking to put into any co-management or co-stewardship agreement. There's very strict stipulations to that because the biggest thing is obviously money. There should be no money involved in this whatsoever. If there is, then we get into a different type of tribal regulations as well as U.S. code regulation, which is we don't need to touch, nor should there be any transfer of that. So I will send that over tomorrow, as well as case studies, other documents, as well as templates for some co-managements that already exist in the country. A lot of the ones I'm using are from Washington, obviously, because they have a fantastic program and an extremely large tribal population there from multiple tribes, as well as I'm using Maine, because Maine, the tribes up there have made an amazing alliance, and with that alliance, they have worked together to not only acquire lands, but create co-stewardship and co-management with the state of Maine, as well with the state of Maine Forest Service. So it's a great example to go off, and I would like everyone to just review that. That's on the focus group, and then part of that is I'm going to loop around with the chairman and the chief of the tribe, so we can lock down a date to do Zoom meetings to get that started. So.
And Dan, is there any need for the select board or anybody else to get involved? Is this
As of
something
right
that
now,
this is within the?
This is within conservation. This co-management agreement or any agreement that's made with the tribe will be for conservation lands only. It will not encompass, I know the biggest one I'm always asked.
We have the authority to
For
do
the,
this.
for the conservation parcels in town, yes. There is a map, it's broken up differently. Basically, what it comes down to, land bank in town is managed by the select board. The biggest land bank we have is Santuit Pond Preserve, which also happens to be one of the most culturally sensitive sites. That will not be included in this discussion because that will include the select board. The idea is obviously love to have every property in town under a co-management, but start with conservation, then take your steps from there for what properties are most important. So this is just for conservation, this purpose. Yeah. So I'll send that out tomorrow, and we'll be in touch, and then, we'll go from there. It is a lot of reading, but I will say it's very informative, so that's for certain.
Welcome to.
Always good.
Always
Thanks,
good.
Dan. Thanks for doing all that work.
I had two goals at work. I never wanted to be quoted in the Wall Street Journal, and I never wanted to testify in court. And I got 32 years without doing either one.
Okay, the next thing I want to bring to everyone's attention is the request that we have for the Mashpee River Woodlands Memorial Bench. There was a letter that was sent in, and that's been forwarded out to all of you to have a look through. It's a very compassionate letter that's been written to the commission, asking us to consider allowing the placement of a memorial bench, and this would be going in the memory of, and I got to get her name right, Natalie Gubay, G-U-B-B-A-Y, who was tragically killed, I believe it was a car accident. Was it a car accident?
Yes, so I did look into this, so it was a drunk driver in Minnesota. He was reckless, hit about 7 or 8 cars that night, a massive accident, and she happened to be the one that did not make it through it. There was a lot of injuries, so it's just a tragedy overall. That's the bottom line, complete tragedy.
Because under Chapter 173, Conservation Lands, we are the trustees of conservation land. This can't happen unless the commission allows it to happen. So I was hoping that somebody would make a motion to address this request here at tonight's meeting, and
Make a
Here
motion
we go
for
with it.
the Cape Cod chapter of the New England Mountain Bike Association to place a memorial bench on the property in name of Natalie.
Natalie Gubay, G-U-B-B-A-Y. Okay, is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Sandy. So I'll open that up for discussion.
Yeah, do we have a plan for the bench size, anything like that? They just said.
They are Leopold benches, is what they tend to be. They're on, at Mashpee River, they're on 2 of the parking lots right now. This is a place to sit. That's essentially what they're going to be.
Okay.
But from my understanding, there was no set idea yet. It was more of, if the commission says we can do it this way, we'll do it this way. If they say we can do it this, they just
Yeah, because the photograph showed where that wooden bench was under
Yes.
just a 2
So that was 2 telephone poles with probably a 2x12.
Yeah.
Been there since
Right.
before I was born, probably. I couldn't tell you, but that, as you see from
I've
the
walked by
pictures.
that bench a number of times.
Yeah, so that bench has seen its age.
Yeah.
That's the location as well. where
Yeah,
that
that's a
bench
great
is.
spot. Yeah,
Do we
but-
have any policy on this?
So for this, we don't. Part of this is part of the policy going forward, Chapter 173, is things like this have to be requested. On lands right now, on conservation lands only, there are some memorials, I want to say some plaques. Everything that is on land right now is dedicated or in memorial to an individual that had direct involvement in acquiring the property, or throughout their life, they physically were involved in protections, whether it be on the property repairing things, calling out stuff that's an issue, picking up trash, or going to all board meetings for getting conservation restrictions or whatever it may be. So yes, sweat equity is exactly it. So that's what we have on property right now at a couple of the properties. One of the former ones, former conservation commissioner, So that's what we have. When it comes to requests like this, again, it is at what the commission would like on property. So I know one of the biggest things that always comes up is it's going to set a precedent that other people are going to come and want to do it as well. And that's just a discussion they have to have with the commission at the time, is how I landed.
Have you received many of these requests, or?
We have not received many of these requests. We had I don't want to say an incident, but we did have one issue at one property simply because the property doesn't have any benches or anything, and one day there was like a massive granite bench installed in memorial of someone who passed away on that road. The issue turned in that we didn't even know. It just showed up. The feelings are there and everything, absolutely. So they were reached out to and said, we can't have benches in parking spots, essentially, because it was taking up a parking spot. And also, you can't just put stuff where it's not. Can we talk about relocating it? And at that point, they just said, no, we'd just rather just take it. So that's the only incident I've had. It's one of those things, if you asked us, we could have directed it. It would not have gone here. It would have gone somewhere else, a more thoughtful spot or appropriate spot. So,
It does mention here in the letter that the family is prepared to cover all costs associated with the bench, its installation, and any necessary maintenance. So this is of no cost to the town at all, and I believe it's the New England Mountain bike club that would do the install?
I actually reached out to them about this just to clarify. So the lady who reached out to them to ask how to go about getting a memorial on property.
Okay.
And they said you have to talk to conservation. Not that we don't want any involvement, but it's not our project. So what they said was, if they say yes, we'll cover the cost for you. We'll cover helping install it, helping build it, and taking care of it for you.
Because they've done wonderful work for us in the past.
That was my question, is
Conservation
this
lands.
person associated with them, and then you could kind of.
I don't
get
know the
into
association with
whole-
them. It didn't seem like she was a mountain biker. I couldn't tell you, honestly. She lives down in New Seabury area, this lady. It's not her daughter.
Yeah, I know her.
Obviously, the family is distraught. They don't, I wouldn't,
Michelle.
yeah. So she's vouching for the family because of such a tragedy that happened is what's going on here, so.
And if this were to be approved tonight, then I would think that the commission would want to have who's ever going to be responsible for this to work through staff so that we're fully appraised as to where it's going and how it's going in, when it's going in.
Yeah, I was gonna make that amendment to the motion.
Right.
saying that to staff approve the design and materials.
Yep.
And there's a couple ways we can go
Installation, all
about
that
that. It can be the typical one I call it the typical one that's there now, where it's just two 4x4s, two 6x6s with a 2x12 on top bolted in, with some kind of either routering or a plaque on it. Or I've gone about it other ways, because of the disturbance and the location to this. I've gone about ways that they can install a bench, not with the town, I've done with the trustees in the past, where you can install a bench on property, you cannot put it in the ground. Basically, what I say is take a 6-foot-long copper rod or a 7-foot-long metal rod, hammer it into the ground all the way under the bench, and then put a chain on it, connect a chain to an eye hook in the bench. Therefore, no one can just take the bench. Benches tend to walk away and light themselves on fire for some reason.
Yeah.
So that was the purpose for that, to reduce disturbance, but also to make sure that we could have the bench there memorial, in perpetuity, not just
Right.
disappearing. So, yeah. So there's a couple ways they can go about it. The mountain bike club said they're open to either way. I think they would prefer kind of like a Leopold bench, because I know I can pop 2 of them on my shoulder and just walk out there. It's just easier to get it out there. And if there were any issues with it, it's easy to replace one board instead of having to replace the whole bench on that, so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that'd be my amendment to work with staff on the design and
Okay,
installation, and so forth.
okay.
Yeah, that would be my concern too, is just any disturbance for the installation, as much of the work to be done off-site, of course, as possible. And I understand we're using sustainable materials, but I would have a question about signage too. And then also just kind of the trail flow, making sure that we're still leaving room for all the passive recreation that happens at that site,
Yes.
which I'm sure would be happening. But I don't know if they're also asking for a plaque on the bench or a sign at the trailhead, or,
It would be a plaque
know.
on the bench, if anything.
Yeah.
okay.
So when it comes to those, there's no regulation on this, I just have kind of a status quo is the way I do it. If it's gonna be a plaque on the bench or a QR code, seems to be one of the more popular things
Yeah.
right now, that it can't solicit any donations. There can be no money involvement whatsoever.
Sure.
It sounds silly to say, but recently I found a QR code on property that was 100% soliciting donations for a private company.
Not silly.
So it
No,
had to
not
come
silly.
down right away, but that's the biggest stipulation. If you want to have anything on here, it cannot solicit any funds.
So would they work with the staff, or would it come back to us just to help them make sure that any language on the bench that's not directly related to Natalie and her memory, her story, and I would just want to make sure that we're being sensitive to the family.
Anything that's going to be written out or drafted, I would certainly send to the commission for
Yeah.
review, absolutely.
The letter does say a small plaque dedicated to Natalie.
Sure, so it could just have her name and, but if
Sure.
there's a
I mean,
narrative.
if it's just her name, with a date, with just a 4-letter sentence or something like that.
Sure.
That's something I might just be like, have at it. If it's gonna be something very long or something that's going to require scanning or soliciting, then it's gonna go.
Only because this is what happens where my family's from. I wonder if we need to also just be mindful that folks may want to leave items or memorial offerings there as well. Flowers, stones, if there's anything that we just want to be sure that we create a space for it, so it's not getting
We can definitely work
You know?
that in this area. This area is not massively cleared, but the size of this very small clearing on the side of the trail, there's more than enough space that could be a side.
Cool.
Side. Yeah, we can do
Yeah,
that.
sounds great. Is this something that would go out to the public as well? I mean, other than just the public hearing now,
Yeah.
just to know that you don't have.
That would be on their decision.
Okay.
If they want to do that. It's not something we're gonna go out.
So
and
there's
do
not like a
ourselves.
ribbon cutting or anything that we would need to?
If they wanted to, they can facilitate that. You know, they'd have to ask permission from you simply because of parking.
It's an event, right?
It's an event, parking, and when it comes to parking, I do need to know because that's off-street and it gets in the DPW and I need permission otherwise.
Sure,
So,
okay.
but if that was the case, that would be up to them and, you know, absolutely if they wanted to do it. I
Sure.
don't think that would be an issue. So, yeah.
And with the new Regulation 1, we will have a form, right?
They'd be coming, they would fill out the form.
Yep.
It would go to the chair and the vice chair, and then
Yep.
you would decide from there if it's come before the commissioner, or if it's just simple enough, you can just do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take a roll call vote.
Do
Steve?
we need a second on my amendment?
I think we had one.
Do we have?
No, we didn't.
Oh, sorry.
Second.
Thought we did. Thank you, Sandy. Anything further before I call for a vote? We're good? Okay, Steve?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that carries, and we can proceed with that.
So contact.
I have no further issues with discussions. We covered all of those, and I know there are some comments here from agents on updates for you to look
wondering where they
through,
went to.
and if there's something, Dan, that you want to highlight out of that before people,
No, I have
Sure.
a,
I would like to
Yes.
highlight if it's okay.
sure.
Yeah, so we want to, now that we're wrapping up Chop Jake, and coming to completion on the construction of that project, I just want to put forth that the next big project is the Upper Quashnet, restoration of the Upper Quashnet bogs. And the Oquape National Research Reserve is working with us to establish like a stakeholder, list of stakeholders and ultimately plan a meeting before the commission at one of our scheduled meetings to have public scoping and input at the current stage where that project is at, which is still, you know, at a conceptual stage, but we want to move it forward to, you know, permit level plans. So just so the commission is aware, that's going to start picking up steam now that we've, you know, coming to the end of Chop Jake. It's not finished yet, but all the heavy lifting and paperwork and deadlines, you know, that's coming to an end. So it opens up more time for us to pursue Upper Quashnet, and Oquape is going to be helping us to establish, you know, a stakeholder list and ultimately find a date moving forward for one of our public meetings to have that public scoping meeting and get the ball rolling on that project.
Okay. Anything else? No. We're good?
Nope.
We
Make a
good?
motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Anybody opposed to that, or we're good? Okay, let me take a vote. Steve?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Rich?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.